I think, well, maybe not. He looks. It is Daisy. I thought you looked familiar.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Kia ora and good morning, everybody. Hello and welcome to the IETF New Participant Programme. I'll introduce myself in a moment, but you are here, in case you're in the wrong room, which can happen at IETF meetings, you are here for the New Participant Programme. And this is session 1 of a 7-session programme that will take place all day. And this session 1 is the introduction. The welcome to the IETF, all of the tips and tricks about things, the gossip, that sort of stuff. Okay, this is the best session of the day. So, I am Jay Daly. I'm the IETF Executive Director, and I've been in this job since about 2019. And I'm an internet person. I started using the internet around about 1986, 1987. And then worked for a long time in the domain name industry, did a little bit in the IETF, and now the Executive Director of the IETF. I am going to be introducing my colleague Michelle, who you have had many emails from over the period of time, introducing you and helping you to things. Michelle will be running the session throughout the day. And if you have any questions or anything about things, ask either Michelle or I about things, okay? So what you can expect from today. So the IETF is a big organisation, and it's complex and it's broad in scope, lots of things going on. It's a mature organisation. It's built up over 40 years. This is the 40th anniversary of the IETF. And so it has detailed practices and rules. And all of these things put together can be quite a high barrier of entry for new participants. And so we've introduced this program to help try to teach you the important things about the IETF, because understanding what do I need to know now and what do I not need to know now is complicated. So that you can become a productive and effective IETF participant, and to reduce the chances of you giving up. We have data that we know from people that they start with the IETF, they find it far too difficult, and they walk away quite soon. So we try to avoid that by, inducting you through this process so that you understand where things are going. We also aim to build a cohort of new participants. So we have this event where you can talk to each other. We have the quick connections later today, and we have the dinner later in the week for you to meet each other and talk and build a cohort, as you go through the IETF. We also aim to provide a head start in meeting people. There are lots of people in leadership within the IETF. There are probably 200 or something or more when you take all of the chairs and the various other people together. And they rotate regularly as well. So getting to, recognize faces and know who people are is useful and helpful for you. So we aim to do that as well. So, and then finally, we want to give you an indication of where the hot topics are, what's being spoken about, what isn't being spoken about. So that's the plan. I give this session as the staff member who gives this, but the rest of the sessions, apart from one, most of the rest of them are given by community members, the same as you, who've just been doing this for a long time and who we think can reasonably communicate well. So you'll hopefully learn a lot from the session as you go through. One other thing, because this is such a complex organisation and this is such a complex day of events that we put together sessions to teach you, we understand that many people need to do this in 2 bites. So they might come to, half of it this time round, and then for their next meeting come to the other half. No, that's fine, that's understood. It takes a while to learn all of these things. So first things first, just to make sure we're all clear, we need to talk about MeterCo. Because all of your participation relies on MeterCo. That's a MeterCo screen over there. This is MeterCo. Everything is controlled by MeterCo. So it is it's our custom tool for remote participation. And it's what we use for tracking attendance and for identification. The reasons why we talk about that later, why we need to know who's in certain sessions, largely related to intellectual property considerations and things. All sessions are linked off the data tracker agenda page. There is a QR code in every session. That's the QR code here, which you can scan on your phone and which will open up the Meetico web tool for you to be able to participate. And we have a little guide to explain to you how to use it. And I think Michelle has sent stuff out in advance, so many of you may be familiar with this. Just some little things for you to know straight away. So just get a quick understanding of the features. There are the normal things that you might expect. You can mute and unmute your microphone, turn on off your video. Then there's joining and exiting the queue with a hand raise button. Those things are normal. Then we have the chat. Now that's slightly different in that you can use Meetico for the chat, but this talks to a back-end server of a chat system called Zulip, and you can also just use a Zulip client directly to talk to that server and engage as well. Then we have the show of hands tool. It's not a voting tool. Will be explained later. We don't do voting in the IETF, but sometimes this is used, or regularly this is used to take the temperature of the room to understand where people are roughly on something. Then we have the map showing you, what's happening at the event, and the note-taking bit. People will talk about the note-taking later, but taking notes during a session is a good way for some newcomers to ensure that they concentrate throughout the session, help them learn what's going on and help them learn to contribute and get started in a session. And then we have the transcription that you can see there. We have, I think, 4 rooms that are human transcribed, and then the rest of the rooms are AI transcribed, and we've been doing that for some time now. So that's effectively Meetico for you to be able to use to go forward. Right, so about the IETF then. So the IETF essentially is a standards development organisation. So its job is for people to come together to agree on standards and publish those standards, and other people to choose whether or not they wish to use those standards. Most importantly, it has no formal membership. Anybody can participate. You can just join an email and participate. People participate as individuals, not as representatives of their employers. Now, what that means is that you have no formal standing by your employer. Because we have no formal membership, your employer cannot buy, a role for anybody in this organization. And that's very different from many other standards development organizations where employers will buy a seat on the executive committee or a voting seat or something for other people. We don't have that at all. So people do say my employer is interested in this and talk about their employer. That's perfectly understood. We're not saying you shouldn't do that, but it doesn't bring any particular authority there. Our standards here are driven by market-based adoption. As you will find, many people will tell you we are not the internet police. We cannot say to people, you must use this standard. It is up to the implementers to decide whether or not they wish to use one of our standards. And if we find ourselves writing standards that are not implemented, then that's a clear signal we are looking in the wrong direction and need to be doing something else. We are bottom-up community controlled. So while I am the executive director, my job is largely to follow policies that have been designed by the community and written down as RFCs. I do not come into any of the technical sessions and influence those sessions by, or have any control over those sessions at all. None of the staff do in that way. And again, that is quite different from other SDOs where you may well have a staff member who is working with the rest of the community on actively writing the standards. That just doesn't happen. We don't do that. So everything is controlled by the community here. And everything that you will see has been built by the community. And we have one of the last sessions of the day is talking about the power of community and how the community has built everything. Most decisions are made by rough consensus, not by voting. The few ones that are made by voting are made within specific leadership groups or groups that are appointed that have rules that say they will use voting, such as the nominating committee when it is deciding whether or not to appoint somebody to a role. That will do voting. So, and we will have a long explanation about what rough consensus means later on as well. There is no formal role for governments in the IETF, though governments do send people. So we are a multi-stakeholder model. There are different multi-stakeholder models. So if you take ICANN, for example, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, a separate multi-stakeholder body, that has a role for government, a role for civil society, a role for the technical community, and those things. We don't work that way. We work in a way where anybody can participate equally in that regard. And then the final thing you may have noticed, outside here, there are no sales booths, no salespeople, no sales-related activity. The people that come to the meetings are the people that participate in the meetings, whether they are engineers, whether they are policy people, whatever, they come to participate, not to do a meta participation of sales or anything else. Okay. So at any point, if you wish to ask a question, go into Meet Echo, press the show hands thing. Michelle will spot it, and then you'll be able to come up to the microphone, and ask a question. Okay. If you're struggling with that, just come up to the microphone. This session's okay with that. Later sessions, you'll probably find people will ask you to ensure you do that. So this is the mission of the IETF. Not the most inspiring mission, but technically accurate. So it is intended to make the internet work better by producing good documents that work, that people use and choose to adopt. So a brief history of the IETF. So the IETF itself was formed in 1986 by what was then called the Internet Activities Board as an engineering activity. It is the Internet Engineering Task Force. The first IETF meeting was attended by 21 US federal government funded researchers, and a number of them still participate. You'll still see a number of them around here. Okay, so at least 3 or 4 of them, I think, are possibly here at this time. And if we can get some of them in to say hello, we will do that as well. Certainly for the quick connections, I think later today we tried to get 1 or 2 along as well. Not sure, maybe not this time. Right. The IETF initially met 4 times a year. Now it meets 3 times a year, and it's always open to the public. The RFC series, which the IETF now controls, started before the IETF, started with RFC 1, published in 1969 by Steve Crocker of UCLA, to organise the working notes of the new ARPANET research programme. And it's now actually gone over RFC 10,000 rather than approaching RFC 10,000. And Steve Crocker is still a participant in the IETF. Okay. The FTP, one of the early standards of the IETF, or of the RFC series, was defined in early RFCs, and RFCs became available via FTP and was therefore the first online publication series itself, because you could get it through its own protocol, which is lovely. And for 28 years, it was managed and edited by the internet pioneer John Postel. It's moved on significantly since then, but his influence still stands in many ways. So I'm going to talk now about the other participants in the IETF, and I'm going to be basing this on data from our annual survey. Every year, we send a survey round to every address subscribed to one of our mailing lists, which is about 50,000. And we know that of those 50,000, about 7,000 people are active at any one time, inactive in any one year. And we get generally somewhere in the region of 1,700 to 2,000 people reply to our survey that we send out. And we just published this last week. So first thing we do is we ask people to categorize themselves as to what kind of participant they are. Are they a regular participant? That's straightforward. Are they occasional? Do they occasionally send something to an IETF list? Are they a reader only, somebody who just reads IETF lists but really doesn't engage? Are they a monitor, somebody who doesn't, who gets lifts feeds but doesn't really look at it unless they sort of feel that there's something they need to look at, you know? So there are many senior managers in organizations who do that. You know, they have a copy of the list in case anything happens, but they don't read it all the time. And then we ask, there are a number of people who cease to be participants in the IETF, and then new participants, people who, many of you, haven't yet worked out which of the other categories you fit into. As you can see, we are skewed here towards the readers and monitors when it comes to the participants who responded to this survey. So this is, while this is useful, when you read the survey, you need to read the survey itself to see what people think broken down by these categories. I can't go into that detail itself now. So this is the breakdown by region. As you can see, Europe and North America dominate and have done for quite some time. Asia growing slightly, and certain areas such as Oceania, where I'm from, you know, are overrepresented represented compared to, say, Africa, which is significantly underrepresented. This is, you know, voluntary adoption and a voluntary participation, but there are obviously barriers to entry that we will talk about that leads to this breakdown by region. Then we have the breakdown by age and breakdown by gender. So as you can see, this is an older organisation. The median is somewhere in the 45 to 54 range for people. And there are still people, you know, significant number of people well over that participating. So over the age of 55, we still have a third or more of participants participating. Now, gender is the bad story about the IETF here. We have less than 10% of our participants are women. This is changing considerably, particularly with new participants. The demographic amongst new participants is approximately 25 to 30%, I believe, of new participants are women. We don't have any good figures to benchmark this against, other than, you know, normal society. We've looked at software development, where people have done a lot of work on gender benchmarking. That's about 25, 30%. But in our area, which is largely engineering, we don't have any good benchmarking figures to understand that. But this is still something that is changing and is growing over a period of time. Then we also ask people about their type of employment and the sector that they work in. And as you can see, most of the people here are employees. Then we have people who are business owners. And generally, those are small business owners. Many of them are consultants or people who used to work for something and now have run their own smaller business. Independent contractors and through to students and others. But to be clear, from looking at the bottom one, as you can see, while business is top, academia and research comes next. So that's because we have lots of employees of academic and research organizations who come here. All right. So the employee bit doesn't necessarily mean all business. So when you look at sector, as you can see, then we still have healthy participation from civil society and not-for-profits, and from government, as well as from business and academia and research. So we are truly multi-stakeholder in that respect. And then this is just something to interest you. We look at when did people first participate in the IETF, going back to 1986. And as you can see, we have a relatively good spread. When people are new to the IETF, they're more likely to answer our long survey. So that's why we have the long tail at the end of it. But still, we still have a lot of people who have been here a very long time and participate. And that is because for many people, being part of the IETF is fulfilling. They enjoy it. You know, it is the things they are doing, the work they are attempting to do and produce is technically satisfying. The engagement that you have to have with other people is, you know, socially satisfying. And for many people, it fits with their careers as well. So people stay in the IETF for a long time and continue with the IETF. So a little bit about the structure of the IETF. The IETF structure is really quite simple. So, you know, one of the things about the IETF is that it is intentionally designed to avoid centralized control, except where it is meant to be centralized control, and to avoid capture. So we have this structure, and this will be explained to you throughout as we go throughout this whole session today, as we go forward, because everybody has a different role and does different bits within that, right? So we can see my role just there, all right? But I don't have control over the other bits. We can see the IETF chair's role there, who is the single most important community person. And you can, you know, his role again is limited. So that's why we have this structure with various people doing their different bits, and also because this is a large and complex organization to do things with. So just going through it very briefly, because we will come back to it later. I think I have it on the next page. So actually, I'll go back and talk to this through the diagram so you can see this. So we have the Internet Engineering Steering Group, which is the peak technical body for the IETF, right? That is the one that runs the standards process. We have the Internet Architecture Board over here, which I'll talk more about, which has the long-term view and manages much of our external relationship things for the IETF. We have over here the LLC, which is the company, the bit that I run that supports people within the IETF. We have over here the research group, the Internet Research Steering Group, which runs the IRTF, the research part of the overall IETF. And this is where things get slightly complicated. We use the word IETF to mean two things. We use it to mean absolutely everything, and we use it to mean the standards bit of absolutely everything. Best not to have a conversation with anybody about that, because you'll get 50 different views just from one person. So then we have the nominating committee, which is a group of volunteers that is reconstructed every year and appoints most of these people to these roles. And then we have down here the working group chairs, 100 plus of 150 or more of those, no, 250 of those, sorry, who run the working groups in which the work take place. So that's, you know, this will be deconstructed over time today for you to understand things going forwards. Right. And the one that I missed off, two more that I missed off, are the IPMC over here, the IETF Trust of IPMC. This is a separate company run by a small group of volunteers appointed that holds the intellectual property of the IETF and licenses the intellectual property. It's designed in such a way that it protects us from legal attack against the IETF by having that put separately. And then over on the end, we have the Internet Society, which is our parent organisation, which is the global charity that is dedicated to the development of the internet across the world. So you'll be able to read on these slides later a little bit more details about them if you want to. So this is the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group. And as I said, this is the peak technical body. These people here are called the area directors, and they are the ones that make the decision, each one of them, on whether or not a technical standard gets published. As a group, they make that. So the working group works on something. When the working group has reached consensus, it comes up to the IESG, and the IESG runs the process which determines whether or not there is community consensus to publish that. And a number of those will be coming to the quick connection session later on today. Then the IAB. So these are again all community volunteers, and the IAB has a number of different jobs. The IAB has been around for a very long time, longer than the IETF, but its name has changed and its role has changed. So it is currently, chartered as a committee of the IETF, and an advisory body of the Internet Society. And it does these 4 things. It does architectural oversight, so technical programs, workshops, other things. It confirms appointments. It has a lot of work on appointments. It appoints the chair of the Internet Research Task Force, the independent submissions editor. It appoints our external board members on things like ICANN and these things. And it does liaison coordination. And it is normally the last body in our appeals process. It is possible to appeal once beyond that, but normally that's where our appeals stop at the IAB. This is just some examples of the IAB activity and recent work. It has run a number of programs looking at protocol evolution, deployability, and long-term maintainability. It's run one on environmental impacts and sustainability of internet technology. It has had a number of workshops, the most recent one being the workshop on age-based restriction on content access. And I think the RFC that is the report of that is just about to be published. It did another one back in September 2024 about practical opt-out mechanisms for AI, and we now have a working group that is working on that. And the IAB has published some very important RFCs. RFC 8890, the internet is for end users, is one of the most important ones. And then 9413, another one about maintaining robust protocols, undoing some folklore, I suspect, that have been built up over a number of years. So then now I'm going to talk a bit about the Internet Research Task Force, the IETF. So this is much smaller than the IETF, and it's a parallel organisation. And it has 16 research groups compared to the 100 and something working groups that we have within the IETF. And the equivalent explanation I'm going to give you about the IETF will be given in the next session. Okay, so I'm not skipping that. It's just that requires a lot more work to go into. So it has these 16 research groups. Looking at, research things, systems and protocol aspects for circumstellar environments, proper stuff that you need to think about in terms of research. And it has its roles, the way it works is slightly different to the IETF. It's headed by an IETF chair who's appointed by the IAB rather than appointed through our non-com process. Research groups have a broader scope. So there are no deliverables, no milestones. They're expected to live for a long time. They can only publish informational and experimental RFCs. They cannot publish standards. And they don't require consensus because they may publish competing proposals or competing ways for doing something. It is intended to be proper research. And they have a separate code of conduct or supplementary code of conduct that covers academic integrity, research ethics, and other things. And it hits some examples of some of their publications: guidelines for human rights, protocol and architecture considerations, and then a number of bits, say down the bottom from the Crypto Forum Research Group about particular crypto algorithms. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the administration and stuff behind. How am I doing for time? Great. So this is me, IETF executive, as I mentioned. And I have 4 teams underneath me. The Secretariat, Cheryl is part of the Secretariat, manages IETF meetings and provides administrative support to IETF leadership and processes. Then we have the Tools team. This is effectively our software developers and architects who write and manage the software tools used by the community. Then we have the RFC Production Center. They edit and publish RFCs. So when an RFC has been approved for publication by the IESG or by one of the other publishing bodies, it goes to the RFC Production Center, who then go through an editing process and then publish it. And then we have the bits that you might expect. We have finance, comms, finance person's over there, data analyst person's just over there, and some comms people as well. So to help you to identify people, on the left we have the Secretariat. Now, all of the staff are wearing badges that have this blue background color there. And just a reminder to everybody, please wear your badge at all times, okay? You will be challenged if you're not wearing a badge. We don't normally have any incidents, but we've already had one thief yesterday walking around stealing cables of all things. So please just wear your badge so that we don't keep being asked, are you a thief stealing cables? Okay. And then the RSC Production Centre, you'll have a talk about them later on today, and only a couple of them ever come to each of the meetings, and they run a help desk that you can find down next to registration, talk about things. And downstairs you'll also find 2 other desks as well. You'll find the tools team desk where the tools people are, and they'll provide you assistance. And then we have IANA, which is a function of ICANN. So this is not run by the IETF. We have a contract with ICANN, but IANA runs the registries for IETF protocols. So the 6,000 or something registries, which have code points, and various other things in them. And then, there's one other desk downstairs, which is partially manned, which is the network support desk as well, for you to go up if you have problems accessing things. And also, this is my normal plea. Please turn off hotspots on your phones. There are some people who have phones who have a hotspot that just blasts like that across the spectrum and like that, and the 15 people around them all complain to us, and it's just annoying. So please turn those off. So we do have a team that's worth noting, which is the IETF Sisters. So this is a team that offers women and non-binary participants the opportunity to meet and exchange knowledge and experience. That has a breakfast during the week and a lunch. If you'd like any more details, ask Michelle, because I don't remember the details at all. So a little bit about the funding of the IETF. The IETF LLC itself is a US 501c3 not-for-profit. It is not a pay-to-play standards development organization, so you cannot buy any formal role. And that means that we run on a much lower budget, say, than something like the Linux Foundation, where to join the Linux Foundation at a particular level, you have to pay several $100,000, and then each of the individual areas, if you then want a seat on it, you then spend another, and so, and your bill adds up, and they end up with considerably more money than us quite quickly. So we receive a significant portion of our funding from the Internet Society. And this is using last year's budget, not this year's budget, because I couldn't get around to changing it. But it hasn't changed that much. So that is the Internet Society give us this money directly. They're our parent organization and they support us. Then we have income from our registration fees for running these meetings and corporate sponsorship. Even with those registration fees and corporate sponsorship, we still run our meetings at a deficit, largely. So we understand that the cost of coming to an IETF meeting is high, and we understand that people would prefer, it to be considerably cheaper and us not to charge so much. But we run, on a tight ship in this way, and that's that we don't have any other form of income. We don't sell anything, to anybody, and so that's why we have to charge that, and that's how our finances work. And then we receive donations as well. We get significant amount of free equipment and services. For these meetings, we install our own network, and all of the access points, switches and other things are donated to us by Cisco and by Juniper, or HPE as it is now. And we receive various other bits of free services. So Cloudflare, for example, support us and allow us access to almost all of their products for free, which is great. So we couldn't easily survive or do what we do now without that very generous support that we get from many of those companies there. And then we get individual donations and some corporate donations as well that help. So a little bit about our policies. How am I doing for time?
You're good.
Yeah, great. So this is the IETF Note Well. This slide will appear at the front of every other session. I mean, throughout the week. This is the only session where it doesn't appear at the front of it, because I need to explain it to you before I put it up there. All right. So this is a reminder of the policies and processes of the IETF. It's not the policies and processes, it's simply reminding you of them and telling you where to go and read about them. So the first one here is about behaviour. We have behavioural expectations, that everybody behaves in a professional manner and extends respect and courtesy to their colleagues at all times. And we have a policy that is the guidelines for conduct. And we have a mechanism for dealing with concerns about that behaviour through the Ombuds team, which is a group of volunteers who are the single most powerful group within the organisation. They are the people who can instruct me to exclude people, you know, permanently from IETF, for example, these things. And there will be more explanation about them later onwards as you go forwards. Then we have intellectual property rules, and I will talk more about those in a minute. Intellectual property rules are exceptionally important for every standards development organisation. We can't get away from that. And by intellectual property, I largely mean patents rather than copyright. Copyright is important, I will talk about that, but something more the complexity is within patents. Then we have our detailed process information about how the standards process works, which is what the next session or the third session will be all about, with some fantastic diagrams to help you understand it. And then just a note about our privacy statement. The IETF is an extremely transparent organisation. So we routinely make public written audio, video and photographic records of IETF activities. All of our mailing lists are accessible through an online archive, you know, except we have a set of private mailing lists for things, but otherwise everything else is available there. All of these sessions, this is recorded. This session is recorded and will go onto YouTube, on the internet, and be there forever and a day. Okay, so everything is public in that way. And while we do attempt to give people, you know, whatever control we can over privacy through the red lanyard, we cannot. Our legitimacy comes from us being an open and transparent organisation, so that people can see that things have been developed in an open and transparent way. We cannot allow a degree of reduction of that and still maintain our legitimacy as an organisation. So, contributions to the IETF. Almost everything that you provide to the IETF, and I'll explain what that is classified as a contribution, and therefore includes a basic grants of rights to the IETF for that contribution. So that means that anything that you say or write in a working group session, you know, at the microphone or one of our meetings, or other meeting session or any leadership meeting, anything written on an IETF mailing list, any working group or design team list, or anything issue submitted to a GitHub repository of the IETF, any of these things, anything written is a contribution, and any document submitted to the RFC editor or the Internet Drafts function. And when you do that, you are granting the IETF through its organisation, the IETF Trust, a perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, a license that lets us use it. Okay, all right. And the IETF Trust then publishes a license about how other people can use it. So it's not, you know, it's not becoming open source or public domain giving it to us. What you're doing is you're giving the IETF rights to use it, but the IETF then controls how others can use it, you know, beyond that, right? And as I mentioned, the privacy and transparency statement. So we publish and almost never redact following things, you know, names, organizations and country codes of all meeting participants, audio and video transcripts of meetings. We, for example, have had somebody start a session in a publicly recorded session with some highly confidential internal slides for their own company. And, you know, it took us 6 months of discussion to decide whether or not to redact that in the video, by which time everybody of their competitors had a copy of it. You know, it's a big thing for us, right? But we also don't sell your data. And we do keep confidential, personal information, application to roles, various other things, as you might expect. Okay. And for the Europeans amongst you, yes, this is 100% GDP compliant. Very happy to explain to anybody who thinks it isn't exactly where they're wrong in great detail. Send me an email, please. Right. So for patents and similar intellectual property. So participants are required to disclose the IPR, all right? And this is what you're meant to do. But we don't check this, okay? This is a disclosure regime that we have. And we also don't advise people what they should do when they see a disclosure. The IETF tries to leave patents to individual participants to make their choices about, and working groups to make their choices about. But what we do expect is good information for people to make their choices about these things, okay? The IETF, I think I've got a slide about this. No, I haven't, sorry, I should probably add one. The IETF does prefer, through its processes, publishing standards that are not encumbered by patents, but doesn't avoid that. So it is generally a decision by the working group as to whether or not it wishes to pursue a particular technological path that is encumbered by patents. And so that is the decision that people are required to make. And of course, the problem then is if people spend a long time working on something and it then gets published and people then disclose their patents that they've held, for some time and haven't told people about, which is then a problem within the IETF that needs to be addressed. So that is why we have this requirement for people there's quite a broad requirement for people to disclose their patents for other people to make decisions about. And this is what a disclosure looks like. So it is simply just who holds it. And anybody can make a disclosure. You can disclose somebody else's patent if you wish, all right? So doesn't have to be your own. But if you do disclose your own patent, then we do ask you, if you can, to tell us what licensing you would be aiming to apply for that. And that is very helpful for people to make decisions about patents. So we're not going to talk any much more about patents throughout this whole day. This is just a small bit of it. It's a technically complicated bit. If any of you are completely confused about this, I would suggest talking to somebody within your organisation about this, about what this means, just to understand a little bit about it going forwards. Okay, so that is the introduction to the IETF. And that's just to help you understand just how complicated it's going to be by giving you a really brief little introduction to the complications of things. Do we have any questions at all? If not, we're going to start the exam on the diagram from earlier. We may hand out gold stars for people as well. So jump at the microphone. Introduce us behind you. Yeah, that microphone there. That's it. Introduce yourself and then ask a question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam from University of Toronto. So in one of your slides, I saw that the age group, the dominant age group, was somewhere between 45 and 54. So I was wondering whether IETF really requires contribution from young people like university students doing PhD or masters, because those age groups correspond to highly experienced people working in industry. So I was thinking whether IETF has planned to increase the participation of young people so that it will bridge the gap between like university research and the real standards.
Okay, so a few things there. The IETF technology space is so broad that there is nobody who can count themselves an expert across everything, all right? It is just way, way, way too big. It is full of specialists who work in individual areas and do things in different things. Some people can be relatively broad, but even then they're still, when you step back to the big picture, looks limited. So there is still, and even within those areas where there are specialists, this is still a developing and changing set of technologies and a growing set of technologies. And so there is plenty of space for new people to get involved and bring new ideas and do new things. Okay. By the way, once you've asked the question, you're welcome to sit down. It's up to you. People often will do that. So the IETF, people choose to come to the IETF. The IETF does not invite people, and the IETF does not select people. So we can't go out and say to a university, please can we have that student, that student, that student, that student, right? It doesn't work that way. And we don't have funding that we can go out and give to people to do that with, because the budget that we run on. So what we have is we try to provide a mechanism that when students and others do come and get involved, that they are welcome and engaged and listened to, and their ideas are adopted and brought in. And these sessions today are one of those. So we actually have increasing set of young people, students and others coming in and getting involved in the IETF and being productive. We also have the older generation aging out a bit as well, retiring, stepping back, these things. So we are seeing that transition very much so. But it is an organic thing. It's not something that we can manage, unfortunately. Well, we just can't manage. Okay. Right. Any other questions at all? No? Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. As I said, you'll see me around regularly. Please come along, ask me any questions if you spot me. All right. And I hope you have a fantastic day today, and I hope you're able to continue participating in the IETF going forwards. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So our next session is going to start at 10:30. So we've got about 13 minutes if you want to stretch your legs, use the facilities, get something to drink, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you.
Jay,
You made some notes, I noticed, yes. You made some notes.
Well, I had a question. You said something about you adding a slide. Something about publishing again.
Yeah, about the IPR, I need to have a slide that explains how working groups use IPR, how IPR is used within the IETF. I mean, it's discussed a bit in session 3, so I need to go and read and see what session 3 says.
I just want to make a note so you don't forget.
I forgot this discussion session 3, but yeah, I'll come to it. Right.
Thank you. You don't have to do it now.
No.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, see you later.
Nice to meet you. I'm excellent person, but this Japanese
Excuse me. I was asking about the Connectors program. I saw that it requires sign-up, and I think I did sign up, but I'm not completely certain. Is there any way I can check?
If you go to your participant dashboard,
Yeah.
in there, underneath your name, it should say that you've signed up.
Yes.
Like it should be right underneath your name.
Let me check.
Yeah.
Step aside for a second.
I have two questions. Sure. The first one for the new participants.
Uh-huh.
I could not find the date.
It's Monday night, but it's currently full.
Yeah, I signed up.
You signed up,
But
okay.
I could not find the date.
Monday night.
So Monday night. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to receive an email.
I'm going to be sending out, are you on the new participant mailing list? So I'll be sending out a message and let's see, tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But yeah, and it's in the hotel here, so you don't have to go far.
That's great. Thank you. And my second question was on the sisters things that I saw. So I just want to have some information. You said talk about breakfast.
So yeah, if you look on the agenda, there's 2 sessions for sisters. The first one is tomorrow morning.
Okay.
It's a little early, it's before sessions start, but it's just a networking breakfast, very casual, informal. And then on Thursday, there's a lunch, but you'll see both of them on the agenda.
Okay. Does it require some kind of sign up or just coming? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome, nice to meet you.
So very happy to start from
Where do I find the participant dashboard?
When you registered,
Yeah.
you should have gotten a link that it's like when you but you know what? Let me just check. I can probably look to see. Give me 1 second. Felix.
Yes.
See. Felix. Yes.
I'm registered. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're good.
And we have a number of our global hosts who will sponsor one meeting every 3 years. This way going forward. In Japan, we've never had a long-term global host who would do that. It's only ever been when a group has come together, we put something together as a specific plan. But if that's something that we can start talking to about 2029, that would be very useful for us to do that. We can send you details of what's involved, and you can start having internal conversations about the next year. That will be announced on Wednesday. And then from year on from that, we are still in negotiations. Well, it's more. Well, it's more. It takes a long time to get these things. So 2029 is probably potentially 2028. The 2028 one is a very, very advanced process. And so it will be 2029 is the earliest. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you. I'll ask you. Thank you very much. I'll ask you to send you these later. Yes.
Thank you, Jay. The struggle is real. Well, and as Jay said, that's often why new participants, like when you sign up and register for a meeting, you can choose to be a new participant for many, many meetings. Because it does take, a couple to really.
I've done a lot of standards. IETF's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
not that much.
Yeah.
As I recall, the registration forms are just selecting new participants less than 5.
Less than 5 meetings, that's right. Yeah. Laura, this is your second. Yeah.
And I ate a bit because I'm 17 now. I had my birthday in the Midwest, in China.
Yeah, it takes a while. I've been coming to meetings for 26 years, and I'm still learning new things.
You can always learn new things.
Always. I did double check that. I said, told you that.
Oh, no. Well, I was going to mess with you. It's either going to come early and make you feel better or come right on time.
It was fabulous, right? Your slides are up.
I used to do it.
Clickers all set to go. I was going to go out and
So cracking the whip.
usher people in the next couple weeks.
All right, cool.
I will keep a memory on.
Yeah, 30 minutes. And that's like, I have 3 minutes to slide. I can talk for 3 hours. I'll try not to, because I don't think anybody's going to do it.
We just want to allow a little
Yeah,
bit
we'll
of time for
try.
questions. But, yeah. All right.
It's awful small compared to the last one. Your stage was like 5 minutes. Note to self, go early to every session.
Okay, I'll be back in 1 minute.
Especially feels smaller because there's 1,200 people here.
Yeah, there is that, right? Switch between the meeting in China and the US, so everyone's going to show up. Yeah, if you kind of think. Okay, yeah, same thing. I don't know if that's. I think that's a question. On the slides, when we attempt to download them, the PDF is empty. Do you populate it at the end of the meeting or? Okay, that shouldn't be that. No, I just did the same thing at about the same time. I thought it was one of those, if you give up now, you don't get the information. Take some DNA samples. Right. Ah, okay. Operator in space. Apparently some of the slides are like some of the downloads.
Where?
He said that the slides, when you're trying to download them, are
From the reading materials?
people when anyone.
Yeah, I know. I've got too many out there.
So I mean, they'll be like.
I'll do slides for the morning session.
Yeah.
It's how you access them that matters. So if you don't go into the link that shows like the agenda, show meeting materials, so if you put it in PDF link, it just drops. So if you want them to go through the show meeting details, then it's to go up to the different PDFs.
Is that a tool you should have?
Yeah.
You got me scared.
I know.
All right, well,
Still
give
got
everybody the chance to
Yeah, sit.
Sit, yeah.
It's nice. It's not full of stragglers trying to get free food that are actually not newcomers.
All right, everybody. Can I get somebody so kindly to close the door in the back that the sound travels into this room? Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and get started on session 2, which is all about participating in the IETF. And so I'm going to pass it off to my friend, Sean.
Hello. Hey, so this is everybody's first time. Anybody nervous about being here and figuring out what's going on? I'm a little nervous. I've never given this presentation before, so we'll see how it goes. So we're all in the same boat. All right, so where I'm here. My name is Sean Turner. I've been involved in the IETF since about IETF 34. I've chaired a bunch of working groups. Some you may have heard of, some you may use. Right now, the fun ones are like TLS and MLS and DOLT, which is like detecting unwanted location trackers. I'm a consultant. I have various clients. I've also been on the ISOC Board of Trustees and other places. So I guess now I'm actually the little dots, right, that you guys have heard about. I'm a chair, so that's the blue dot. And this purple one is the IPMC, so that's the trust. We'll talk a little bit about that later too. Yeah, and so the funny part is how I actually broke in and got started in the IETF. I went to a meeting and people were like, we need somebody to take notes. So I agreed to take notes. And it worked. And at the end, you know, it's back in the day when you had like overhead projectors, you wrote down little plastic microfiche thingies. And so I had to go figure out where to send these things. And they were like, hey, you come to lunch. And then I went to lunch and they were like, why don't you write a document for us? And that's how I got started. And now I've written like 70 RFCs at this point. So the best way I think to get really involved is to do something. And sometimes the simplest way to do that is to just take minutes. So think about that when you're when the chairs are asking for volunteers. It also keeps you focused and out of your email, because a lot of people, when you're presenting and you look down and look at everybody and they're typing away on their keyboard, should really be paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the room. But, all right, let's get to the fun well. This is the note well. You will see this at the beginning of every session. This is the policies and procedures and IPR related things that you need to go through and need to understand this. You'll see this by Friday. It will be a joke because you will have seen it 100 times. But basically the idea is about the IPR stuff. If you see something, say something. If you know about an IPR thing, you're supposed to disclose it, or don't participate. And that means get out of the room. There's code of conduct and anti-harassment stuff. If you feel like you're having an issue, you can go to a chair, you can go to an area director, there's no buds team, there's a whole process in place for all that. The standards process is another one that you kind of got to follow on, but there's going to be a whole session, I believe, on that actual process stuff later, so I'll save you that. The other thing is you're going to be recorded, right? So you got the little lanyards, you've got a red one, you're probably only going to be photo if you're in a large group setting or if you're at the front of the room, because that's how it works. And if you're presenting, there's a pink X up here. You're supposed to stand on that so you can be on the video. So this just kind of be aware that you're being recorded. And that also gets back to the first thing about the code of conduct. Remember, you're being recorded. So if you're being rude or jerky, it's going to be on YouTube. Not always a good look. All right, email. I hope you like email. There's a lot of it. Some people hate it. The newer people that are younger that come along, they're like, email, I use Slack. Well, email is how this place gets work done. So there's a bunch of mailing lists. There's over 500 mailing lists. And people are like, oh, why don't you switch to what the cool kids use, Slack or whatever the newest thing that is that's going to come along. Well, the surveys that we do, that Jay runs all the time, basically consistently comes out and says IETF mailing lists are really kind of the thing that people want to use. I don't agree, but that's life. You got to go with the flow sometimes. A lot of people spend a lot of time in GitHub now. because that's where you can write drafts and do everything, but that's not the official place you do things. So like when you send an email about GitHub, you put a link in there and people follow it around. It all kind of works. And remember, all of your emails you send are contributions. They're in the public record. You can Google those from 1972 or something. Remember that. All right. Mailing list, there's all kinds of types, right? There's announcements list, which is like, hey, you know, a new RFC has been published. There's ID announce. So every internet draft that gets published before the IETF, there's this huge spike. It's nice to be on that list, but it's a lot of email. You get to be friends with your filtering mechanism because you're going to get overwhelmed. And there's also the IETF announce, which is like the sister organization, which I assume is also covered somewhere else in this presentation. Not this presentation, but throughout today. And there's working group BOF list. The thing to remember about that is for each working group, there is its own specific mailing list. Sometimes they kind of overlap, but mostly people don't cross-post on many of the mailing lists because it's just kind of rude. Because many people are on multiple mailing lists and you get like 6 emails from one person, you're kind of like, did you really need to send it to all these people? And then there's some other IETF general things. There's the IETF general list, which is just kind of like general community discussions, like, I don't know, whether you like the cookies or not. There's some architecture we'll discuss. There's a last call list, which is specifically for when the documents go through the process and it gets to the point where it's going out before it's going to be evaluated by the Internet Engineering Steering Group, which is the ISG, to make it an RFC. It goes out to the whole of the IETF to get cross-area review. So that's where the message goes out. And there's admin discuss, which is things like finance and policy. And if you're a finance and policy person, it's really interesting. If you're not, maybe don't ever join it. There's also non-working group lists, which are sometimes technical and sometimes not. So they're not a working group and they're not a BOF, but maybe there's somebody that's even before all that process is like, hey, I want a list. And they've convinced an area director to go off and get a list started to talk about a thing. And so they go talk about the thing. There are other lists like the runners group and the sailing group and the whatever group, which you can also join to kind of find your little community of people. And then there's meeting specific lists. So I hope everyone joined the 126 attendees, because then you can find out about whatever the changes are. Like, you know, that good stuff, right?
The new participant mailing list is most important.
Yes, that is true. Right. Okay. So lots of mailing lists. Don't join them all. You don't have enough time to go through all of them. Just you got to pick and choose and wade your way in there because just you'll get overwhelmed. All right, operations. It uses Mailman. I don't know that any newcomer is really going to show up and be like, let me go get in the Mailman settings. But you get an account and then you can get on. And so the nice thing about this is that all the lists that are there, they're all public. So again, you can go back to 1970, whatever, and look at the old emails. And you don't need to use like IMAP or like Outlook. You can just use your web browser to go through, depending upon the interface, and we'll get to that in a second. The nice thing is about once you're subscribed to one mailing list, you're pretty much whitelisted into all the other ones. So if you want to be on 6 mailing lists, you only got to join 1. So yeah, that makes it easier on you, so that you don't have to go around and spend a lot of time figuring out which ones you're on. You can just do it. This last bullet is it's highlighted on purpose because what you'll hear during the sessions is we need to go confirm that on the list. So people will do a show of hands, we'll have a discussion, and it gets into the heat of the battle, and then we're like, okay, it looks like we're going to go this way. And then we'll go, well, all right, now we're going to go check it on the list. So we have to send it to the list and see if we can continue to get consensus there, and then ends up being the kind of like final way to do it. Now, the interesting thing is before you would hum, and now they use a thing called a show of hands tool. So you use the show of hands tool to make sure that people that are remote can actually participate as well. So it's a little bit fair, and that kind of came about sometime around COVID. All right, mail archive. So if you use the interface to get to the mail archive, you can get to the data tracker, or you can jump directly to it for mail archive at IETF.org. And it's pretty much pick your poison right here. They made a user interface, and you can pick the way you want to do it. You can do the different ways you want to view and you want to search. You can find links. You can download it. You can download individual messages, like over there on the right, and then you can just hit reply and your mailer should take care of it. What else? Yeah, that's just like the tool. Go in there, start poking around. You can't really break anything. So, just get in there and poke around if you're looking for info. The search is pretty good. It's pretty fast, and it works. Yeah. All right. Okay, email. So we send a lot of email. Think about email. Do you want to read a 16-page email from somebody about their particular thing? Probably not. You want to have it short and kind of on point, right? And that's really the best way to communicate and get things done, is to write effective emails. Don't send email in anger. If you are excited and really hot to chat on a particular topic, maybe take a couple of minutes before you send it. I often write email and don't send it. It's a good plan. Threads and useful subject lines. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you really want somebody to read it, you should pick an interesting subject line, but not so interesting that it's inflammatory, because then that's bad, right? But it's usually you're trying to figure out how you're going to kind of scope the conversation, and so you're the one that's kind of maybe if you're starting the thread to try to figure out how to get in to get your point across, and you can do that by some good ways and some bad ways, and following along what's on the list and watching what other people do that are effective at getting their ideas across. You can try to mimic what they do. There's this whole idea whether you top post or bottom post in an email. You know, the etiquette here is you're supposed to do it underneath so that people will read the original message and then they will get to your post. Some people do that, some people don't. The other thing is you can cut down on the amount of text that's in the email. So if you only want to reply to a particular point, you just put snip, S-N-I-P, and clip off the rest of it, because it saves everybody else who's kind of like scrolling through the messages. They don't have to go through the rest of it. It just kind of makes things a little bit faster. All right, in your corporate environment, you might have some really cool backgrounds with some nice tags, and you know, on the bottom, you don't need any of that here. Most people use the old school emails with none of that stuff. So there's not pretty text, you're not highlighting things, none of that gets done. It's mostly just straight, you know, basic non-HTML kind of stuff. So, you know, send those kind of emails at your own risk, because you might get some comments back. But that's pretty straightforward. All right, the data tracker. So there's the IETF.org mailing list, which is like the main list. I never go there. There's no reason to go there. So I get a data tracker at IETF.org because that's where most of the work gets done. So it's a document management system, right? It's like your own bespoke system that keeps track of the documents, the status, like all of that stuff. If you do go to other standard development organizations and they have their own particular flavor of whatever, you might like it, you might hate it. This is just the IETF's version of that thing. The decision support team, it's basically where the ballots for the different documents go through, and you can track all the various different states. People, if you're here, you probably got a data tracker account already to get in, because if you want to log into anything, you got to get an account. And so it's pretty straightforward. There's also groups, so you can find the different bodies, the different areas, the working groups, directorate, the research groups, the teams, etc. And so you can find about pages about them, like who's on them and what they do, and the charters, etc. Again, the documents is where most people jump directly to. So if you go to the working group, it'll jump directly over into it shows you the documents, not the charter, and then you have to click around to figure out which one you want. The meetings, obviously, because you got here, you probably ended up over there at some point. It's nice because it has the agenda in there, and you can pick through it, and we'll get to that in a second. There's other things up there too, like IPR disclosures and liaison statements, etc. All right, so this is the front page. This is what it looks like. Again, you can't. Jay's got his name up there. You can click away. You can't really break anything. So it's fun to get in there, because as you get more privileges, then you can't break things. So I can break things. I don't want to. I get very nervous. And so again, this is the authentication provider. So again, if you're going to go to a session, it's going to ask you to log in. And if you don't have a data tracker account, it's a non-starter. But if you're here, chances are you already got one. It's the same thing with the mail archive. So when you log into the mailman thing, it gives you a you get logged in, and then it sets your privileges, and you can click on the lists you own, the ones you're part of, the ones you moderate, etc. There's bunches of stuff in there that you can get to. Wikis, the notes at IETF.org, which is where most of the notes get taken for the various sessions. There's a Zulip instance, which we'll get to in a second, and then the Yang catalog of stuff for management. They've got separate accounts for the mailman and the data tracker, and eventually they're going to merge all that together, so that'll be fun. Luckily, it's not me. All right, meetings. While you're here, this is great. These happen 3 times a year. They're sometimes referred to as a plenary meeting. I've never used that term. And they rotate around in various parts of the world. So this time it's in Europe, next time it's in North America, and then we'll have an Asian meeting. And kind of where you end up is just, they have to go do some negotiations. They do a site survey, they figure it out, and it gets announced. And usually, they try to announce them as far in advance as they can get away with, so that you can do a little bit of planning, but it's usually announced at least one cycle in advance. So working group sessions, there's approximately 130 working groups. That number is pretty steady. When stuff comes and goes, it pretty much just stays at 130. It's interesting. I don't know why that is, but that's what it is. Birds of a feather, which is like a pre-working group. It's where people get together to like talk about it. So it's, and I think I suspect you'll get into that later at one of the other sessions. The research group, they again have about the same amount, about 16 research groups. That's part of the research groups are part of the IRTF. It's different from the IETF. They have slightly different rules. And then there's a big plenary that happens on Wednesday night. It's fun because it's an open mic session. So all the leadership has to be up on stage. And if anybody wants to say anything from like, I like the cookies at the session to you guys don't know what you're talking about, people can get up and do that. And there's also other area like open meetings. So like the IAB has a session where they just go and they have a particular set of presentations lined up and then you can go and ask them questions. The hackathon, which is happening basically across the hall, is going on. There are social events. Sometimes there are social events, but a lot of times that's related to how much funding because it's not free. And so if you have a corporate sponsor and you would like to write a check for having a party, let me know. We'll get you to the right people. Some of them have been fun. We went to one in Orlando, Florida, and they rented Harry Potter World for us. That was pretty cool because it was just us, and that was pretty neat. And I guess in China, they had some really interesting ones. And, you know, when money gets tight, funding the social events goes away. And then it's kind of like do your own thing. There's also stuff that happens here with respect to tutorials and deep dives. Like you'll like, hey, how does BGP work? Well, they'll get the guy that wrote BGP to explain it to you, which is kind of neat because it's like a horse's mouth. And that's been useful in times because sometimes people don't always get the full story and you can actually talk to the people who help bury the dead bodies when the protocol is developed. Hot RFC is where somebody hopefully has something in RFC that they think is super interesting and they think that you want to know about. So it's like kind of come and, you know, let me tell you all about my thing. And they try to make it a little more entertaining than just like, here's my protocol. So, because they're trying to get your attention and get you to come to the session. And then there are side meetings, which are not official meetings of the IETF. But there's like another page that kind of lists through those. They're not supposed to clash with the regular working group sessions, but they sometimes do. And then various ones, there's also applied networking research centers, research prizes at the IRTF open meetings. And that's kind of neat because a lot of times it's like testing and things that they've like taken the protocols and actually done stuff with. And so that's kind of interesting. So you can actually find people that did this stuff. All right. Standard setup. So when you're a chair like me, you sit at the front of the room, and basically there's two screens at least, and then there's one for the speaker. So you don't have to stand here and like do this. Then you can't hear me when I talk. So it's better if you kind of stand here and focus this way. Again, there's a big pink X up here so you can stay on camera. And then the cues in the microphone. So if you want to get up and say something, you just get up and say something at the microphone. Before you get up though, you should be logged into the on-site queue management tool. And so you basically put yourself into the queue and then you can walk to the microphone and they'll say John and you kind of jockey for position with everybody else to get to the front of the queue. You talk and then when you're done, you take yourself out of the queue. Again, we do that to support remote attendees so that we can kind of like manage the mic line because people will be dialing from all over the world and it's hard to be like, hey, am I next? Are you next? And some of the rooms that are bigger, there could be multiple microphones. So like if you go to the plenary, there are probably like 6 microphones out there. And so that's fun. So the person at the front of the room then is trying to figure out who's who. So it's kind of fun. Again, fully supported remote sessions. Everything, again, is recorded and transcribed. If you sit too close to a microphone and you're over there, you will note that your conversation will go into the record. So maybe, you know, don't talk about your corporate secrets right next to the microphone when they're recording. There's power strips on the floor. There should be, so that usually you can plug in. If you've got a newer laptop, maybe it'll last longer than 5 minutes like the one I had for a while. So it's good. And typically it's funny in the sessions, usually the first couple rows, there's tables, and oftentimes those are supposed to be reserved for the people that have read the drafts or written the drafts. I don't know that it's followed as much anymore. And then the pro tip here is these rooms are smaller than some of the other meeting sessions we've been at. So go early if you want to sit at a table where you can not burn your legs with your laptop. And again, as I said before, everybody uses the Meet Echo thing to log in and sign in to make sure you can get in the queue and do all the various things you need to do. What's next? General meeting etiquette. it says wear what you want. I mean, wear what you want within reason, right? Like wearing a Speedo, maybe not. I mean, in Hawaii, people did present in their bathing suits, right? They literally had just gotten off the beach. It was kind of funny. You can come and go as you please. If you're like, well, I went to the wrong one, go. If you think you're going to leave early, obviously don't sit in the middle of the room and then have to go through 12 people. If you think maybe you're going to bounce around, sit near an edge so you can get in and out. Yeah, and again, it's like behave, respectfully and tolerant towards others. You can really dislike somebody's idea, but you can still like the person. I've had this problem before where you'll get into it with somebody about their particular draft, and then you'll say like, hey, this idea is great. How can I help you? And the person will say, oh, I didn't think you liked me. Like, it had nothing to do with you. That idea was crazy. This other one is great. How can I help you? So it's really about again, be nice to the people. English. I often make jokes that they're American euphemisms. They don't always fly with everybody else. So you try to be a little more normal and not crack too many jokes. The difference is too with English, like if you're making slides, get them in early because there's not everybody where English is not their first language, and it gives everybody else a chance to maybe read ahead and participate a little bit better. That doesn't always get done, but the chair should do a better job of kind of like riding herd on the people that are presenting. There are some people that speak really, really quickly. Like I'm literally thinking slow down every time I open my mouth. There are people that can go really, really fast. It's okay to ask them to slow down because it's just computer people that don't talk to anybody else and they just go real fast. And it's better that you understand.
And we have an IETFer who actually, he has his own speed, right?
Yes. If you're remote, obviously you want to test your stuff to make sure it works. There's a test site for the Meet Echo things to make sure it all works. One of the things that's important is that in an IETF meeting, they don't always spend a lot of time doing tutorial material. They jump right in, right? It's like, here's an issue. Let's get through it. Let's talk about it. So if you haven't read the draft and you don't know what's going on, you might be lost. So it's good to check ahead to see what's on the agenda, and they usually have draft names and you can link to them. If you go to the session, when you build a session, you can actually put the drafts that are going to be discussed at that session. And so if you do that, it's nice because then you can catch up and you can get involved quicker. Yeah. And again, another thing is try not to repeat. So if the thing's been said 14 times and you get up to say it the 15th time, people are not going to be thrilled. Oh, lanyards and dots. All right, so this is the thing. So I mentioned I got a white one. You can take my picture. I don't care. Some people in red. I just always assume you're security people. So that's always funny. But yeah, so it's like people shouldn't be taking pictures of you if you're wearing a red one unless you're in a group or you're at the front of the room. The little things tell you where they are, where you met, and then there's a bunch of this stuff down here: the chair, the ISG, IB, LC. So that's if you're chair of a working group. The ISG is the group that is full of area directors, which is the one that tells you that's in charge of all the other various working groups. The Internet Architecture Board is kind of one that's kind of parallel. The LLC is the money people. The IRSG is the Internet Research Steering Group. Then the NOMCOM is the people that pick all those other people. And then the IPMC, which is one of the ones I'm on, is the trust, the people in charge of the legal holding of the documents. And if you want to personalize your badge, you can add all kinds of little things on there. Some people go minimal and some people go crazy. So you'll see some people, they're down to their knees. It's whatever you want to do. It makes you need to do what you want. Yeah. Yeah, so there's somebody running around. It's a woman this time. She's taking photos. So if somebody's taking a photo, don't be surprised. It's not, it's going to be used, but it's probably not going on Twitter or Facebook. If you don't want to be photographed, wear a red one. It's exciting up here. There we go. All right, cool. Sorry about that. Meeting technology. All right, this is the agenda tracker tool. It's part of the data tracker, and you can go through and set up your agenda and pick things. So if you look on the most important part is obviously the sessions that you can go to. So it gives you the location. You can click on the event location and a map will pop up. So that's helpful because it shows you where it is and you can figure out where you are. There's the name of the session thing, and then you can go click on the ones down on the right. The interesting ones really are the on-site meeting tools. The one you're looking for, that's the one you use to log in to make it work. You can make the cool thing is you can actually set it up and make your own calendar invite so that you only have to follow those and don't ever have to come back here. And they're not, it's set up nicely because if you click through it, you can get to all the same data. And again, so on the right, you can build your own calendar. So like if you like pick the sessions and then you can click through all the ones from the various areas that you care about. And then you just end up downloading the thing to your thing. It's pretty cool. The NOC team. So these are the people that make the network at this hotel scream very fast. It's also going to allow you to like watch dancing cat pics in the elevator and all the crazy things that they set up. They get direct connections from most of the major providers. There are some funny stories because the IETF is a network hog, and they've burned routing equipment down in various hotels. And the hotel doesn't love it, but at the end of the day, they get free networking consulting experience with the guys that made this stuff, setting up their new hotels. So when we leave, it's usually better than when it started. The Wi-Fi SSIDs, pretty much throughout, if you're staying in a hotel here, at least in the conference hotel, the IETF-hotel works, and it's just as fast. And the team is managed by a mix of people that are volunteers that have been doing it for a long time, and then some actually paid staff as well. Yeah, they're fun. You can go check them out. They'll, if you walk in there and just be like, hey, they'll tell you all about it. All righty, Zulip. This is the chat thing. There used to be Jabber, and now it's Zulip. It's one of the things on the agenda page. You can click on that too. So if you're really good, you can be in multiple sessions at once. And if you're in a Zulip session or a Zulip room for one meeting, and you want somebody else to go to the microphone, you can put mic, and then people will walk up to the microphone and say whatever you put there. Yeah, it's neat. All right, then there's the wiki at IETF.org. It's the same. Like if you go to the IETF.org website, you put meetings and then you put IETF 126, you'll get all this meeting info. It tells you where it is and stuff. And the side meetings is a place where you can figure out the stuff that's going on, and various other things like venue information. If you didn't figure out that you needed a different plug for Europe, this is where you're going to find that out. There's a weather, emergency assistance, all kinds of things that people have had to figure out, or we're too lazy to ask Google. So it's fun. And then one of the things is the arrival and departure information. So if you want to share a cab or take the train or whatever, you can put it in there and you can try to coordinate with people to get to and from. And that's also an interesting way to meet somebody. I've done that. It's funny. All right, Meet Echo. This is not WebEx or Zoom. I would advise you to try it out beforehand because it can be a little daunting, especially if you're trying to get in there and say something and this is your chance. It is fairly intuitive after you use it a couple times. One of the reasons why we do use it is because there's a show of hands tool that we use a lot. And again, I think it's just going through and kind of playing with it and trying to figure out if you're presenting, when do you have to press all the buttons. And again, it's better to try it out before you actually have to immediately need it. And that's it. I gave you 5 minutes for questions.
Awesome. And this is a great opportunity to test out your Meet Echo. If you have never put yourself in the queue and you want to do so now, even if you don't have a question, feel free to just test it out and make sure things are working. No pressure in here. And if you do have a question for Sean, please put yourself in the queue and head up to the microphone.
Gosh. Well, good. Make sure when you fill out the survey, said he was great. Terribly entertaining because Yeah, there we go.
Just keeping an eye. People.
All right. Well, I'm around. If you got other questions, let me know. It's all good. Is there a cookie break or something? Is that when he's don't?
We do have a little break in between this session and the next one. Just keeping an eye on the room to see if we have any more questions. Okay, questions going once, going twice. Okay, so thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we are perfectly on time, currently 11 o'clock. We have a 15-minute break right now. Again, if you do have questions and you're just too shy to go to the microphone, come on up and ask us. Feel free to, go take your break, catch up on email, whatever you need to do. The next session is on standards development. Some would argue it's almost the most important session because it's really all the meat of what the IETF does here. So we're going to have Rob Wilton, who used to be an area director, who's very familiar with all of those processes. He's going to be presenting. So we'll get started right at 11:15. So we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. I asked friends to bring some papers. Thank you.
Specific question. I think I'm presenting on Thursday. Is there a way I can set it up beforehand to see if everything's working?
So, are you going to be presenting as you're
At the IRDF Open.
at the IETF Open? So usually what ends up happening is you'll send those slides. You can use the data dropper tool to upload it, and so then when you go, you're not plugging in. They're gonna set it all up for you, and then you're gonna use this.
Meeting notes with those transfers.
So it depends.
I'm doing it on a Google Note.
So if you do, so usually they upload PDF. Usually they do PDF, but you can share screen. So there is a way to do that. What I would do is try to check with the IRTF, the person who's the chair, whoever that is, to make hey, I'm doing this. How do you want to run this? Because they can give you screen control, so you do it. It's a little touchy.
I'll reach out to them.
Definitely coordinate with them.
Yeah.
The other thing is also I need to sit down for the duration of it. I got Stanford.
They can move this. They can move the chair. That whatever you need to get done. I mean, it's all good. Yeah. I would just tell them beforehand, because then it's not do it the last second.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is we can let MeetEcho know ahead of time because they'll control the cameras. So if you're sitting right here, close to the microphone.
We'll see more than just the top of your head.
Yeah.
No. That's we need to test this more often because people with wheelchairs and stuff. Cool. All right. Good stuff. All right. So hopefully I didn't talk too quickly.
No, you did all right. Perfect timing. Hello.
Oh, good stuff. Very cool. All right, good stuff.
Download the presentation material.
If you go to show meeting materials and you go to slides, they're all right there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean.
No worries. See you again.
I noticed a few people walking around with cold caffeine coats or whatever. You know where they got those, or
They're probably outside. We
I
have,
see lots of coffee, but
so if you look on the agenda, you'll see there are specific beverage breaks.
Wow.
So usually at the actual beverage breaks,
they have other beverages.
usually there's something more than water and coffee. And if not, it's a lot of people going somewhere and
Downstairs
getting.
and grabbing.
Yeah. So we've been getting coffee from two different places, but I wasn't the one that went. But I will tell you, starting tomorrow, we have a barista that we bring into the hotel that provides free coffee, mochas, lattes, everything. And so you will see the barista starting tomorrow, and they'll be here all week.
And how long is the line?
Well, so usually we have two places set up, and the line just depends on sessions starting. But yeah, usually it's
Well,
not
the
so bad.
machines over there seem to be a little bit better than the group.
I have a super random question.
Sure.
So similar to people said to bring a water bottle so you can refill it. Do you know where the refilling place is? I mean, I'll just grab a water if I have to, but I was like.
There should be pictures somewhere out in the hotel. Hold on,
okay,
let me.
wait, no. I was looking for like I live in Berlin. I've just been like indoctrinated by like the water fill stations at the airport, and I was like looking for those. I'll just go.
Hold on, I'm gonna double check real quick. Hold on.
Okay.
Every venue that we go to does it just slightly
I'm
different.
sure.
So just double checking to see.
Did you try to put the water bottle?
I brought the water from my hotel, actually, so no, not here. I haven't been looking.
Sean had a little water accident here, so we're waiting for paper towels. Somebody's typing.
Okay.
I can go and get some.
Oh,
I'll go and grab another bottle of water as well. Actually,
Paige is
I might
on-
be losing my voice from yesterday, so
you're losing your voice already?
maybe we'll see.
Oh, Paige is supposed to bring the paper towels.
Fine. Okay.
So-
Okay. I'll go grab some. Are we starting? What's past?
No, you have till 11:15. Yeah, you're good. You're early. Somebody's typing a lot because now 2 people are typing. There's water stations in each room.
I think what they need is just the bottle.
Yeah, so supposedly there's a water dispenser in the hall around the corner from the hackathon. Yeah, but there should be a water dispenser, I'm guessing, on that side of the room. Yeah.
Yeah, those bottle openers suck.
Right after you said that.
You just confirmed it. Yep. Oh, there's right here. What? Sure. She just got a little excited. Here.
I don't need my laptop.
No? Yep, I got a clicker here for you.
This is purple.
18. Right there.
Okay. Good? You want me to take that for you?
Yeah, I'll just leave. I'll keep this one here just in
Just
case.
in case.
Doesn't trust me.
Where's the speaker standing? Approximately here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, because I decreased the image, I can't do anything more than this. But I think that then you're not in a projection.
Fine. Okay.
Somebody saying something?
Yeah, so but it said that the speaker is always in the projection.
Okay. I mean, I'll just stand slightly to the side.
But I think that's fine because this way you're slide in the projection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
You got 5 more minutes
It's okay.
to relax.
I'm looking at the slides this morning. Gosh, there's a lot of material on these.
Yeah, you've got the hardest one, but I told everybody it was the most important, so no pressure. All right, so you were talking too much yesterday?
I think it was just in a hackathon. Yeah, the room's loud and it's just. I'm probably fine.
Okay, this is all ready to go. I'm more grouchy. There's no grouchiness.
No.
Right up loud.
Sound.
Bless you.
I'm gonna say I would say to take questions during the presentation. That's fine, and I'll ask you to mention and if you just keep an eye on the time for me and just give me one being too slow.
I will.
Because I'm sort of thinking talking about 40, 45 minutes of maybe 15 minutes to show
Yeah, I think, give me a second to double check something. So you are set for an hour.
Yes.
So, yeah. I'm just going to go shut the door.
Have fun.
The sound tends to carry. Just a reminder, scan that QR code if you haven't already.
Right. Okay, so hello everyone. I know you've had a couple of sessions already this morning. I hope you've enjoyed those. Hope they've been good and useful. I've got quite a long session here for an hour and covers a lot of the detail of the standards process, and it tells you also about a bit about how IETF is structured in bits that you more like to interact with, if you're part of the IETF part of it, the standards development side of it, and also how you bring new work into the IETF. Now, the amount of detail here is sort of too much for you to consume in this one session. So you've always got the notes to go back to and look towards, but it's really to try and give you an overview of how this stuff works and fits together. So you've had the introduction to IETF, you've had participated in the IETF, those two sessions, and this third one, we're going to talk about the areas, working groups, the process that you actually go through to get a document through the whole process, and then perhaps most importantly and interesting to you is how do you bring new work into the IETF? What do you do? What are the approaches? And there's different ways of doing that. I'm happy to take questions at any time. So if you do that, then please use the queue and use your either laptop or phone to register in the queue, and Michelle will very kindly look after the queue. If I'm running behind on time, I may move those questions to the end, either at the end of the session or after the session if necessary, but feel free to ask questions as we go along. About me, I've been working for Cisco in networking basically for about all my career, 25 years now. I used to work on Ethernet and VLANs, layer 2 technologies, and then moved into network management. And that's the point that I sort of got involved in IETF. And that was about 10 years ago I first came to the IETF. So I was like you in a room coming to these new participant sessions. It was much more simple at that stage in terms of what the sessions were, less detail. I think hopefully it's got better now. And then after about 4 years, I then moved into the IETF leadership, which is sort of quite quickly. I'd skipped out being a working group chair and I went on to being an area director. I'll talk about those in a bit more. And that happened just as COVID was beginning. So I also had the difficulty of handling being an area director, a new area director, and also everything being remote at the same time. I did that for 4 years, and then I'm now sort of back in the community as just a regular participant. I do chair a working group, the Green Working Group as well. It just sort of says that you can, your journey through IETF is sort of what you choose to make of it, and in terms of how you participate. The note well, this session obviously is an IETF session and it's covered by the note well. Normally for most of these meetings, we'd give you time to read the note well and go through it in more detail. But because you've had the sessions this morning covering the note well in a bit more detail, I'm actually going to skip over it this time, especially given we've got quite a lot of content to cover. So with IETF, when you come here, it's sometimes quite hard to figure out the wood from the trees. There's a lot of different stuff that goes on, and that's organized in different areas. And what the IETF is working on changes over time. And to try and provide some structure to that, the IETF is split into areas, like broad areas covering particular technologies or groups of technologies. And then within those areas, it's sort of divided into working groups. Now, these areas can change over time, and the boundaries aren't completely strict. So some technologies will span across multiple areas, and you might just define, what's the best home for these things. But basically, if you look at what the areas are and the working groups that can help sort of direct you to the bits of the IETF that you might get the most out of, as your new participant. So the IETF is split into 7 areas, and these come under the responsibility of the IESG. And that's the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group, has the overall responsibility for the IETF standards process. So most of the RFCs, there's a few other PARs, but most of the RFCs come under the responsibility of the IESG to go through the entire process and get to an RFC at the end of them. And as I said, the IETF is split into areas, and currently it's 7 areas. That can change, and those areas can change over time. So the time that I've been in IETF, a couple of areas merged into, or split and merged into different areas to make it easier to characterize where the work is currently happening. For each of these areas, you have roughly 2 area directors, and those are the people who are responsible for all the working groups in the area, and they're responsible for the RFCs that get published by that area. So as the documents go through, you'll find that the area directors get involved in the latter parts of those stages, particularly for the areas that they're working on. They also review documents in other areas as well, but it's the area directors that have that responsibility. And each of those areas is then split into working groups. You can see down the right-hand side, it sort of varies between normally about 15 to 30 working groups, depending on how big the area is, and depending on how big those working groups are. So some of the working group sessions you go to this week, you might find there is 200 people in the room or 300 people in the room. They're really large. And other working groups are on more niche areas of technology where you may find there's only 20 or 30 people in the room and some people online. So what the IETF tries to do, or what the IESG tries to do, is split the work between the area directors and split the work between the working groups to try and balance everything. The other advantage of the areas is it means that the technology, similar technologies grouped together. And so if you're interested in a particular thing, like if you're interested in network management, which is the best area, clearly, then that's, that all the sessions and working groups are sort of scheduled so you can go to most or all of them. So again, the areas serve a function to help the sort of scheduling of the meetings so that you don't find that all of the meetings for your given area are happening at the same time. They'll be spread out. So I'll quickly cover what the different areas are. It's listed on the slide, so to have a look. But art is the sort of highest level area, applications in real time. So this covers things like email. It covers video conferencing technology like WebRTC. It would cover messaging when IETF was doing more of that. And other small little application things that sit close to the application layer. So JSON schema, I think, is probably their other one. So that's the one that's sort of closest to the application and closest to the user in a way. Then you've got the gen area, the second on this list. This is like a special area because this is actually involved about the IETF processes. So the IETF uses RFCs to publish technology, but it also uses the same mechanism to control the rules of the IETF and the rules of the IETF standards process. Those are also RFCs. And it's this gen area that is responsible for evolving those over time and making changes. So it'll be things about evolving the process or meeting venues, all that sort of thing might be what comes under the gen area. That only has one AD, and the AD responsible for that area is also the IETF chair. So it's Roman is the AD and the IETF chair for the gen area, but they don't cover technology, it covers process stuff. So if you're interested in process, go to that one, but be aware it's very process focused on those documents. The int area is the one that you probably most think of the internet effectively. It's like the layer 3, IPv4, IPv6. It's sort of the middle band of that technology. DNS falls into this, DHCP. So it's the IP layer, but the things that are sitting outside or are more around the edges go to different areas. Ops management, and it was I was the ops management AD when I was an AD on the ISG a few years ago, which is why it's clearly the best area. And this one's also slightly unusual that you normally have one area director that's focused on operations and a separate area director focused on network management. Most of the other areas, they are interchangeable. They don't have that same sort of split. I don't know if that's changing over time. It might do. And so network management is all about how you manage the devices on the network and things. So it's the protocols to talk to those, getting data off.
And the operations side is about how operators deploy networks and manage these protocols and things like that. So that's obviously a key part to this, is you've written the protocol. It's like, how do you actually deploy this? How do you upgrade it? What's the security concerns, etc., related to those? And that's that area. The routing area is a slightly bigger area, and that's why it has 3 area directors rather than 2. And it's responsible for all the routing protocols like BGP and OSPF and ISIS, so it has responsibilities for those. The newer technologies like segment routing, SRv6, MPLS, traffic engineering. So it has quite a broad band related to sort of routing protocols and signaling, and most of the sort of control about how the internet sort of works and talks to each other, and all these devices communicate. Security area is, again, it's a larger area, still only 2 ADs, and it's quite cross-cutting. So it has responsibility for security across all protocols, which is quite interesting. So all protocols have to be secure by design, and they will have to have a sort of security consideration section in the document. And the security area directors and the people working in the security area will review the documents to make sure that they are secure and point out any issues and things like that. But they're also responsible for any of the security related protocols that might be to do with certificate management, or like secure transport, TLS will be there. So anything to do with encryption, security, post-quantum cryptography, all that sort of fits under the security area. And then the last one on this list is web and internet transport. So this is like thinking of like HTTP, which is the protocol that the web browsers use to fetch web pages. Anything to do with APIs related to using HTTP as a mechanism like that. So it fits at that layer. It doesn't cover things like HTML, which is the language that you use, because that's part of W3C. But anything below in terms of the protocols for doing web interactions falls into the WIT area today. And then each of those areas is split into working groups. And now I'm not going to go over every single working group and what it does. I don't even know, in fact, what they all do, because they change over time. So these working groups come and go. So some of them are long-lived. So NetMod and NetConf under Ops area, those ones that I participate in quite heavily, those have been around for a long time, at least 10 years, maybe 20 years, because they sort of exist for the same technology as the technology evolves. Other ones will pop up, do some area of technology, and then they'll be completed and the working group will shut down, so that other working groups can be created. And you can see from those lists that the working groups are categorized by the areas. And then you can see also in this list that some of them have been bolded. So dispatch and the art area, gen dispatch, and sec dispatch on the sec area, these are all dispatch working groups. So these ones are where new work comes into the area. So if someone's got a new idea and it's related to security, then one of the obvious paths to take it to would be to say, send it the new draft to the sec dispatch list and request a presentation slot on sec dispatch. And then within those dispatch working groups, what they try and do is not to advance the documents within that working group. They try and say, this is where you should take that new work, and whether the sec area wants to work on the work at all. So they might say, oh, you should go and take it to this existing working group if you didn't know about it. They might say, actually, this is a brand new area of technology. We need to create a new working group for this, if there is consensus for doing that. Then a few other area ones like int area, there's ops AWG, and actually there's also now an ops area as well, and RTGWG. Again, all of these working groups that are bolded here sort of are more cross-cutting and cover more of the area level discussions, new work coming in, and sort of status updates for the area. So some of those are more approachable potentially because they're not actually necessarily going into the weeds of a particular protocol that's been around for 10 years or something. And IETF loves acronyms. So effectively, you'll find that when the new work group's been created, the IESG will try and come up with a clever name for it and a clever acronym. I can't even pronounce the word. So they'll come with a clever title for their working group and things, and everyone refers to them by that. So it's worth sort of knowing those names. So with obviously so many areas and so many working groups, how do you actually figure out your way of through all this? And this is where data tracker is one of the best tools for finding out. The other best way of finding out this stuff is to actually ask other people. You'll find other participants will know within the area what the working groups are doing. So the experienced participants. And again, if you ask the chairs of the working groups or the area directors and things, they'll help point you in the right direction. But data tracker has a lot of information about what a working group is doing, what area it is in. It gives you its name, you can see here. It tells you who the area director is responsible for that working group. So that will be the person who ultimately decides whether the work gets published and whether they're happy for it to be published. So they have a large responsibility, and the area directors have responsibility for oversight of all the working groups within that area. So they're there. It also, data tracker lists all the documents related to that working group and new work that's targeted towards that working group. And that's particularly important. I'll come on to that in a minute. And tells you the status of those documents as well. It has details of the meetings that happened and the upcoming meetings. And it also has the charter listed there, which says this is the scope of the work that the working group's allowed to cover. So if the working group can't just go and decide it's going to work on some random technology or go out of scope, it has to stay constrained to the work that's in the working group charter. And the charter is agreed between the area directors with input from the community as to almost like a contract, as this is the work you're going to work on. This is the priorities. This is the technology you're going to deliver. And then once that work's done, or if the requirements change, then the working group is rechartered. The charter's changed to whatever the new work is. Each working group has some working group chairs. Normally it's 2, some have 3, some only have 1. And again, those are listed in data tracker, and you can find who those working group chairs are. You can find out how to contact them if you've got questions. So if you know you've got some work you're interested in that's targeted towards a particular working group, as in you know it's to do with network management, then you could email the network management chairs and say, I've got this idea. Can you help me bring it to IETF? What do I do? How do I progress this work? How do I present it and things? So they'd be willing to help. And you've got a link to the mailing list of the working groups. And the mailing list is a great place to see what's actually being discussed on the working groups, is to track the work. So, and if you've got new ideas, emailing the working group mailing list is a great way to sort of interact and talk to them and get started. Also in data tracker, that's probably equally important as that previous page, is the list of documents that working group is working on. And this is only showing the top section, and this is for the ACE working group, authentication and authorization for constrained environments, which is a bit of a mouthful, so everyone is going to say ACE because that's easier. And there's sort of 4 sections to these documents, only this top section shown. So the section of documents that lists on the data track of the working group is the list of documents that have been adopted by the working groups. So this is work that the working group's actively working on. You'll have a list of documents that the working group is finished with, and then the IESG is now processing. So it's in the latter stages of the sort of RFC cycle. Then there's going to be a section of RFCs that's been published by that working group. And finally, at the bottom, which is perhaps most interesting, is work that's been targeted to that working group. And anyone can target a draft towards a working group just by in terms of how they name it. So that's the key bit in terms of choosing who you think that your work might be aimed for. And on this, you can find the documents. You can click on one of those links for a given document. And again, it tells you a lot of history and information about the document itself. So you can see here at the top, these 2 bars shows the different revisions of that document from when it was an individual document, and then the point it became a working group document. It was adopted by the working group, and it shows you those revisions. And you can click on each of those and see individual revisions. You can also see the current version of the document in text or HTML. And I recommend now, actually, for some of these new documents, HTML is a good choice because in terms of diagrams and sometimes readability, lots of people still use text. And the other thing that's sort of quite helpful is like the history tab there that allows you to compare between 2 revisions. So if you come back and this is your 2nd or 3rd IETF, you might have gone to some of these working groups and seen some of these documents that have been presented before, and they've evolved. And you might not want to read a 100-page document from scratch again. to see what's changed. So instead, you can see the differences between the older and newer revisions, and then just comment on those. But everything's in scope. So having told you a bit about the IETF in terms of its structure, I'm now going to go through the standards process. Again, there's lots of detail here. Try and take the sort of the high-level view of what's going on, and know that it doesn't matter in terms of the details. There's always people that will help you at various stages of this process if you start taking a document through the IETF standards process. Before I get onto that, though, I want to talk about consensus and humming. So the IETF doesn't vote. Lots of different organizations have this idea of where you are a member of that organization, paid or through employment or through national governments and things, and you have the ability to vote on documents to decide they get published or not. But that's not the process the IETF uses. It uses this consensus process, and more than that, it uses something called rough consensus. And it's a bit nebulous as to what rough consensus actually means. To the extent there's actually an RFC that tells you and describes a bit more about what rough consensus is. Some people think that it means that everyone has to agree, and that's not the case. It's trying to get a read of the room or the people participating in that working group as to what's the general direction that the working group agrees and believes in this technology. And that's the direction it will normally go in. But it doesn't mean that it necessarily is taking the most popular one. It might be that somebody's raised some objections for a different approach, and nobody can refute those or stop those. Like there's no counter argument as to how to mitigate that objection. In which case, the working group may then go in a different direction and choose to say, well, actually, even though lots of people say we should go this direction, the issues and things stop it being published in that way. One of the things important with the IETF is that everyone who comes to the IETF is participating as an individual. So they obviously have their names of their companies on their badge. I work for Cisco, but you're participating in the IETF as an individual participant, and you're trying to do the best for the IETF, not the IETF, for the internet as a whole, and for the technology as a whole. So you're meant to come here and say, actually, even though my employer would like me to do it this way, I think a better technical solution or better pragmatic solution is to do it a different way. And so one aspect of that is that when it comes to these discussion and decision points, consensus checks, it's like, how do you do that? If you're saying, actually, I don't agree with the direction, but I don't want to put my hand up and say I disagree, because if my employer or somebody else is in the room saying, well, why are you voting that way? Then you try and do it in a sort of pseudo-anonymous way. And there's two ways this is done. The old style is humming, and we'll do a hum to sort of see what that's like. So, and the idea here is to get a feeling for what the room is thinking without actually identifying individuals. So, so you've all come to Vienna, and hopefully it's a nice venue, and maybe in a working group they're discussing whether or not we should come back to Vienna again, hold another meeting here or not. And so the working group chair wants to get a consensus, a feeling for the room of what the consensus is. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to say, and then if you agree with it, you're going to give a little hum like this. I won't do the mic, so and you can do it louder or quieter, but basically give a hum as to whether you agree with it. And then I'll do one for the reverse question to see if there's difference. So my question is do you think we should come back to Vienna? Do you think IETF should come back to Vienna? So now hum if you think that's the case. And now the reverse question, who here thinks that we shouldn't come back to Vienna? So hum if you think we should come back. So again, as you can hear, there's a few people who obviously opposed to it, but the consensus of the room is that we are basically supportive of coming back to Vienna. Now, what's important with this is that when you're trying to figure out when some people disagree, it's important to try and understand why somebody's objecting. So at this point, if somebody says, I don't want to come back to Vienna, it might be a good reason for that, and you want to tease that out. So often a working group chair would then ask the working group, okay, so anyone who's objected to that, do you want to come up to the mic line and explain, what's your reasoning for not coming back to Vienna? And maybe somebody will come to the mic line and say, actually, the food's awful, I don't want to come back for this reason, whatever. And the working group can evaluate whether that's a valid concern or not.
And I also want to point out that show of hands tool that we pointed out in Meet Echo earlier on is an attempt to include remote participants, because obviously when you're in a working group room, you can't hear the hums of people that are participating remotely. So that's where that technology has come in to hopefully include the folks that are participating remotely.
Yes. So you won't really hear hums very often now. Everyone will use the show of hands tool that Michelle's mentioning, but it's intended to achieve the same thing with the limitations of the technology and by also including remote people. But again, you'll see that vote of hands doesn't tell you exactly who's voting. It just gives you that overall, and it's not a vote, it's a show of hands. And it's not like whichever gets the most is regarded as being the winner. If the two votes are very similar, then the working group chair will probably say, well, the consensus is unclear, it's balanced, or there's a clear, strong consensus in one direction or another. So it's just giving you a read. So on to the actual process. So on these next few slides, you'll see there's lots of stages to this, but the key bit to it is there's really 3 fundamental stages of taking work through the IETF. And the first phase is the individual phase. And this is when somebody brings a new idea. They might be a new participant, they might be an existing participant, but they bring a new idea to the IETF and they write up a draft. And they then evolve that. They probably discuss it and present it. And it gets to a point where the working group will decide whether or not they want to take that work on. And at that stage, you then, if the working group, there's consensus that the working group wants to adopt the document, then it comes into a working group phase. And the working group now logically owns that document. So it might even appoint a new editor for it. That's unusual, but it can happen. But you're responsible, if you're the editor, to represent the views of the working group as you progress this document. And it sits in that stage and gets better and has reviews and is presented and will be across multiple meetings likely through this working group phase. And then at the end of that, at some point, you get to the point where you decide that the working group's done, it thinks the document's finished, and then it has another phase of reviews. There's a check at the end of the working group, and then it goes on to the IESG for processing. And they are responsible for doing some more checks between the different areas, more reviews, a bit more processing, and ultimately at the end of that process, assuming everything goes well, an RFC pops out of it. So I'm going to talk through these 3 phases, but really understanding the earlier phases are more important than the later ones. I won't worry too much about the IESG processing, because if you bring work to the IETF and you're going through this, you'll find that the working group chairs will help you, document shepherds will help you, other members of the community will help you, the IESG members, the ADs, everyone will help you through the process. So initially you have an idea what happens. So anyone can publish an internet draft. It's easy. And sometimes this causes confusion in the industry because people will say, the IETF's working on IPv10 maybe. And the answer is it's not. It's not working on IPv10 at all. One individual has posted a draft to the IETF and they've labeled it IPv10. And it turns up in data tracker. It might be against a working group as a potential document to consider, but it's clear there's no consensus to adopt that work. Nobody wants to change to a new version of IP at this time. But you got this individual document, you start with your idea, you publish this document, you bring it to the working group, you send it to the working group list as well. It'll go there automatically, but you'll send an email saying, I've published this new document, this is what it's about. Please can you review this and send me some comments? And if there's people who are interested, they will review the document and they'll send you some comments. And it's up to you as an individual document author what you do with that feedback. You're not obliged or required to incorporate it. However, if you want the working group to pick it up and these people who are commenting on it are part of the working group, it helps to try and understand their comments and incorporate them, understand their concerns and discuss with them. It's actually, no, I don't think you're right. I don't think we haven't done it that way for this reason. We should do it this way instead. Have those discussions. And so you get this phase of evolving the IDs, internet drafts, IDs as we call them, presenting them at the IETF meetings, and they have lower priority in the sessions because they're not adopted work. And you get to a stage where you think as the authors that you think there's interest in the working group to adopt this, and the working group chairs will then decide, do we do whether or not to do an adoption poll for the documents. And so the working group chairs do a call for adoption, and this is the first consensus check. They say to the working group, this document's been proposed, you get 2 weeks to review it, And people will review it and send feedback. And it's like, yes, I think we should support this document. Or I think, yes, I support this document, but I think these changes should be made. Or no, I don't. And then the working group chairs will evaluate what the consensus is of the working group as to whether to adopt that document. Now, adopting a document doesn't mean it'll get published as an RFC. It just means the working group's interested in working on that currently. They can, it's unusual, unadopt documents. They might try and work on it in a working group because it's not finished at that stage. It's just some stage through the process. Then they work through the document and find there's some fundamental issue that means that the solution doesn't really work. Some security thing you can't mitigate or mitigate, and ultimately you say, actually, no, this is a failed thing, and you unadopt the document, it's done. Once it's been adopted, you have the same sort of cycle of evolving the document that you did as an individual author, but it's now the ownership is under the working group. So if the consensus of the working group is you have to add in some feature A, and you're opposed as the editor, then you have to add it in because you are just editing the document to represent the views of the working group. And ultimately, if you are the editor of the document, you say, no, I'm not doing this, they would appoint another editor because it's not your document at this stage anymore. You might be the author, and often you'll do most of the changes and work on things, but you have to represent the views of the working group as it goes forward. And then once the document's gone through the working group a number of times, there's no count or limit. It depends when all the issues have been resolved and everyone thinks it's done. The authors will say, I think this work's done to the working group chairs. And then the working group chairs will decide whether they agree or not. And then the second sort of consensus check is done. First formal one is this working group last call. And what you're trying to do is does the working group agree, have consensus, rough consensus, to publish this document as an RFC? And so they will do another round of reviews. Everyone gets an opportunity to review and comment on it. And the authors will incorporate and discuss those issues and things like that. And some people will say, actually, I'm opposed to this document being published occasionally in some of the working groups. And other ones, working groups, actually, everyone's fine. They're just providing comments on how it should be published. And there's another consensus check to is like, does the working group have rough consensus for this document to progress and go forward? And that consensus check is on the working group chairs to evaluate that consensus. At this sort of stage, there's likely to be a document shepherd that's assigned to the document to help write up and check it for nits, check it for various things, to check that all the T's have been crossed and the I's dotted. And then at that stage, it gets submitted to the ISG for publication. So it gets handed off effectively to the area director. And during this process or just after this process, you may get directorate reviews if you're in this. And that's normally reviews from either your area or other areas from other people who aren't in the working group. Like a fresh set of eyes in the document said, okay, I read this document, but actually this bit is just not clear to me because the authors have been spending 2 years, 3 years discussing it and in detail. And they've sort of lost the fact that they've not written down the introduction or not explained it clearly enough. So these director reviews can be really helpful to pull out these sorts of things. They also, it might be your document touches on a few different areas of like security, or it might be using a new transport port or something, and you haven't quite followed the rules there for what that area requires you to do. And again, the director review would pick up and say, oh, wait a minute, you need to change this, or you can't have a port number allocated, or it needs to be something else. So they all help. So the whole thing with the IETF process is like, how do you get lots of people to review your documents? How do you produce the best standard that you can, if possible? How am I doing on time?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, fine. Excellent. So once the working group's finished the document, it gets handed off to the ISG. And the first step of that is the area director does their review of the document to say, do I think this is ready to go forward? So they will review the document. If they have concerns and things, normally the authors will then address those and it'd be fine. Sometimes they might have bigger concerns about the document, say, actually, I think some more serious changes need to be made. And they might go back to the working group to say, no, you need to do some more processing. It goes back to the working group. They'll evolve it. They might do another second working group last call. In fact, that can happen even without the AD's involvement to try and get to consensus. So, but at some point, assuming it gets through that process, the area director says, yes, I'm happy with this. And then they'll also sort of at that point issue director reviews if they haven't done already, and then schedule an IETF last call. So this is the point that the IETF technically checks for consensus across everyone who's a participant in the IETF. So anyone gets the opportunity, if they're in any working groups on the IETF mailing list, to review that document and say, actually, yes, I agree, this should be published or not. Now, in reality, most of the people who are interested in that technology will be going to the working group and they'll be commenting there. And by far, the best time to get your comments and thoughts incorporated is as early into the process as you can. You'll find that people are far more willing to try and mitigate and make changes early in the process than late in the process, because it's a lot more work, or you might be undoing other things that are done. But you get these directorate reviews and they come back, and as it says here, anyone can comment at the IETF last call, even if you commented on the working group last call, and then it's up to the area director to then do another consensus check on that document. So they all say effectively, does IETF have consensus to publish this document? And that might just be, nobody said I support it, but nobody said I object. So at that stage, the IETF last call, there's nobody saying don't publish this, but it's assumed that the working group wants to publish it, and that's fine. So that's the second sort of consensus check that's important. And the responsible AD makes assessment as to whether it's ready, and once they're happy, then it goes on to the ISG evaluation. So the second part, like the last part really of the final check of the drafts that become RFCs, is this IESG review. And at this stage, all of the area directors are invited to review the documents and ballot on the document as to whether they think it should be published. And effectively, I'll cover the sort of how that balloting works later, but you need to have the consensus of that ISG that yes, this document's ready to go forward. And if they say no, they might end up going back to the working group to say, you need to change these things. If the working group chairs haven't been doing their job correctly and it's out of charter, then it's possible like an area director might say, wait a minute, you're doing work that's not in your working group charter. So you need to change the charter of the working group to bring it in scope, or something else, or the document doesn't progress. And the ISG can block documents. It doesn't happen very often. They do end up delaying them as they want changes to make them better, because mostly the people who are area directors are people who are very experienced in their area and understand the concerns. So it might be, the one for network management might say, well, actually, this isn't going to work from a network management perspective. You haven't considered this. You need to add some information into the document to explain how you manage this document, this protocol. And then the ID gets revised with the comments from all the area directors, and eventually then gets approved. And then it sits on a queue waiting for the RFC editor for a bit to pick it up. And then finally, the RFC editor will make some editorial changes to improve the text, improve the readability, etc. at the end of the process, but not change the meaning of the protocol, not change the meaning of the document. They're only trying to make editorial changes until it finally gets published. So this is the whole process. These are all the steps. It can take, you can do this maybe 4 months, might be the minimum, 6, more realistically, 2 or 3 years, can be longer. I've got documents that are going on a lot longer than that, but we won't talk about those. Yes, so it depends how long it takes the technology to effectively become, everyone's happy with it and understood and the documents are correct. So you don't need to know all these. The early ones are more important than the later ones. So all the working groups tend to operate in similar ways. They all use data tracker, but there are some differences in terms of how individual working groups work. And sometimes you just have to join the mailing list and interact for a bit to understand what they're doing. I think over time, more working groups are using GitHub now than it was. There's a trend to use more of GitHub. Certainly the documents I do, I manage them on GitHub as well. Makes it easier to track issues and things like that. But other ones might not. Some of them might do some of the discussion via GitHub. Others might do it mostly on the mailing list, which I do. There is a sort of requirement in IETF that the mailing list is still a sort of primary way you interact in terms of certainly all the consensus discussions and things will happen on the mailing list. Working groups can have these plenary meetings, so they can choose to have 1 or 2 slots for here, but they can also arrange for interim meetings. And normally interim meetings is like a virtual online meeting that is arranged by a working group. And some working groups will have a regular cadence of interim meetings where they just sort of progress the work. Other ones might sort of arrange individual interim meetings for a particular topic. So there's some idea that's been discussed, one of these meetings is like, actually, you've only had 5 minutes to present in this, or 10 minutes. We need to have a 2-hour discussion to eke out all of the issues and things like this and understand it better. So they'll arrange for a virtual interim meeting. The downside to the virtual interim meetings is it's hard to arrange a time zone that sort of suits everyone, because people from all around the world come to the IETF. So that's the bit that's tricky. Occasionally some of these have interims in person. It's quite rare nowadays in my experience. Some working groups have a working group secretary or a technology expert assigned to them, and again, data tracker lists who they are. You can sort of basically, it's the working group secretary might do requests on behalf of the chairs, but you can always interact with the chairs as the first port of call. Some working groups may assign different editors to documents. I think, again, that's generally quite rare unless there's something contentious. Mostly it's normally the authors who also pick up editing the document, in my experience. And then the last thing to say is design teams. So again, design teams are quite interesting. There's an RFC that describes these. So this is where you get a smaller subset of the working group to work on a particular topic or idea. And they don't generally work in isolation for a while on a separate mailing list, and then they'll come up with this is my conclusion, the design team. Now, what's important to understand here is the design teams don't bypass any of the process. So the output of that design team is just the same as if an individual had written it, except it obviously has a bit more consensus because it has the consensus of the people on that design team. So the working group will still have to do an adoption poll for that document and say, does everyone else agree with it? As to why this is sometimes helpful is because everyone who's participating in IETF from all different walks of life and different competing vendors and things, sometimes there's too much friction in a room and somebody won't publicly sort of step down from their position in a larger forum, whereas in a smaller team, those issues and things can be sort of melted away and mitigated in a smaller group. You find that people are more willing to bend on their views when they discuss these things. So sometimes these things have helped sort of progress tricky issues forward. You're probably wondering, where do you find out about interim meetings if you want these? So they'll be announced on the working group mailing list. They'll also be announced, I think, on IETF Announce as well, possibly. They get announced somewhere. And also data tracker that also lists all the interim meetings. And not only does it list them, it has the links to the resources for those interim meetings, which should be published a few days before. It's not quite as necessarily as good as the plenary meetings or how strict people are. And again, you'll find like the meeting notes of that, how to connect to the Meet Echo session for that interim meeting. So all of that is on data tracker. So a bit more on the IESG. So I talked about what they are. So the IESG is sort of the leadership body responsible for standards development and the community involved with that and the processes. They're very busy individuals, certainly during these weeks, because they are managing maybe 10, 15 working groups, and they'll go to all those working group sessions. They'll have chatted to all the working group chairs beforehand to understand what the agendas are. They'll understand what the hot issues and things like that are. So they're very busy during this week, and you may find that if you want to talk to them, that it's hard to find time to chat to them. Often they will have an office hours for a given area, and you can see that in the agenda. That's a time when a half an hour slot when anyone can go and chat to them about a particular issue. So that's one way of going to chat to them. They should be around, or some of them also be around for the new participants quick meet up later this afternoon. And again, that's a good idea to go along to that. I suggest that. Try and find the areas that you're interested in. Try and talk to people who are interested in the same sort of technology areas, and they'll direct you the right sort of way to go. So you don't have to necessarily know. If you just go into that room and ask anyone, they will either point you to the right sort of direction or somebody else to ask if necessary of where the technology is. As part of the balloting procedure of the documents, you have this meeting that happens every 2 weeks called the telechat. This is a meeting that's open to all to join that meeting, but you can't participate, as you can't speak in the meeting unless you're invited to do so. But it's the meeting that the IESG holds every 2 weeks to discuss the documents, discuss how the ADs review the documents, and resolve issues effectively. So When the area directors review documents, there's sort of different choices of how they can ballot on the documents. The two common ones you see here are either comment or discuss. And a comment is just on that document is like the feedback from any other participant saying, I've reviewed this document and I've got these comments I think will make it better, or these things are unclear. And sometimes if you're new to this process, you've got the document all the way through the working group process, your individual process, you think you're done, and you get to the IESG review and suddenly you find you've got 15 more reviews with quite long comments and things from different people. But remember that all they're trying to do is to make your document better. So they're not trying to stop you or hinder your work. And they got the expertise in that area, and they're a fresh set of eyes that won't necessarily know that document. So they're just trying to help. But it's up to you with the comments on how you address them. You're not formally obliged. You don't have to act on them, but they are there to help you. Sometimes an area director sees an issue with a document that they are so concerned with, or not so concerned with, concerned enough with that they think actually this has to be changed before I'm willing to let it be published. And it basically a single area director can delay or stop a document from being published if they have concerns. And so they will ballot a comment, discuss blocking ballot vote, and they'll put the comments and their concerns in. So they'll clearly identify or address, these are my comments that's up to you how to address, and these are the things that are blocking comments in this document. You're obliged to interact with the area director to find out how to mitigate those. Sometimes it might be, this is just unclear and I need some more clarity for this. It might be, oh, you've missed this process step or something that needs to be addressed. You've not got this registry reference correct. But in all cases, even though it can be quite scary, it's worth knowing that probably the majority of documents that go through the IESG telechat end up with at least one discuss on them, maybe two. So don't be disheartened if you see those. And it's not the AD saying your work is terrible. They're just saying you need to address these comments before happy for this to progress. And just have a discussion with them. So don't be scared or frightened by them. And the working group chairs will help you. The shepherds will help you. The other area directors will help you. So it's all fine. And then the output of the standards process, that's taken 4 months, if you're very, very lucky, 6 months or a few years and things, is an RFC. And I don't think they do particularly well, the RFCs, of sort of showing you the differences between the different documents, but they actually have different statuses on the RFCs that get produced. And some of those make quite a difference in terms of what the consensus level is. So most of the documents you see published through the IETF stream is either proposed standard, PS, which is basically, this is a standard, it's done, normally like a protocol or something similar. And that has has a strong consensus with the IESG from all the different areas ready to be published. There's a higher level of proposed standard, which is internet standard. And that's the final stage that an RFC ends up with, one of these proposed standards. There aren't many things that ever got that high. And that's because normally by the time something gets to internet standard, it's clearly obvious that the whole internet or lots of the internet is deploying it. So IPv6 is an internet standard, but it was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago it became an internet standard, a long time after the RFCs have been published and it's been worked out. So I would ignore that one. So proposed standard, a lot of documents you see, or quite a lot are informational documents. So these aren't meant to be new technologies. There might be documents that are design documents or practices on how to use it and things like that, but they're not formal standards. So again, they still have to have IETF consensus to publish them, but they don't necessarily, people won't necessarily be so concerned that they're exactly right. The area directors, when they're balloting, they can ballot a bit more softly on informational documents. But those are the two main categories that you see. The other ones that sort of pop up now and again are BCPs, and these are best current practice. These are slightly confusing because they actually cover two purposes. One of them is out to the internet community saying, this is the best practice for deploying security. I recommend that you should be using at least TLS 1.2 and probably TLS 1.3. So you might find there's a BCP that says something like that, or maybe something different, but effectively it's to the community giving you advice, or I think you should deploy DNS in this way. This is what the IETF community believes is the best way of managing this protocol. You also get BCPs covering the IETF processes themselves. So like the IETF standard that says about the processes RFC 2026, there's also part of BCP 9. So again, you see BCPs for these reasons. But again, unless you're very into the process, I wouldn't worry about those so much at this stage. And then the final one on this list is experimental, which again, is you don't see very many of them. And it's a technology that is not yet ready, but you want to try and see how it sort of acts on the internet. And normally for experiments, they expect like a bounded time frame. So it'd be an experimental document might be like, okay, what's the measurement of how you check whether this experiment succeeded or not? How are you going to evaluate? And then after a few years, if you get an experimental document, either effectively it becomes unused, or if you actually then think, yes, this is working, I need to tweak these few things, you might then publish a new version of that document, a new RFC that picks up that technology as a proposed standard.
A little quicker in the next few.
Okay, fine. Bringing new work. Okay, fine. So, one of the things that you care about mostly is about how, you might be participating in the IETF to see what's going on, or you might be trying here to bring your own work to the IETF. Some of you might have already written an internet draft. Is there a show of hands of anyone that's got like physical show of hands of people? Yeah, so some of you have written drafts and things like that. And you're already partly through this process. I've got two people in the queue. Oh, fine. Fine. Okay.
It's a different kind.
New show of hands. Okay. But the thing with the IETF is there's various questions you have to address. It's like, is this some work that the IETF is interested in working on? You've got to get this consensus of the community, which can be hard to find. Is like, is this something the IETF wants to work on? Or is this something that actually is out of our scope of expertise? So an example might be somebody says, we want you to work on crypto algorithms for cryptocurrency and things like that. It's like, well, that's not really in the domain of IETF's expertise. It could go in that direction, but you'd have to sort of ask the people within the IETF. It's like, do you want to move the IETF in this direction? And it may be, well, as I know, we're more interested in networking than crypto protocols and things like that. So the first question you ask is the IETF the right place to bring it? It's important to understand is this something that's going to be used? So the IETF isn't really about, I want to publish my great new protocol and idea. I would love to do this. It's about stuff that gets deployed and used in reality. So be able to show that there's people who are writing implementations for the protocol, showing that there's people who are going to deploy and use the protocol is especially important when you're going through this process. And the last thing that matters to the IETF is this actually engineering work, or is this just research? So if it's just research, there's the IRTF, which is the Internet Research Task Force. And that's one where you take new ideas that are being discussed that are more researchy. And then the IETF is where you're doing the engineering. So this is stuff that's going to get deployed on end devices, on people's phones, computers, on routers, on switches. So that's what happens in the IETF. But as it says here, there's loads of exceptions with this. These aren't hard and fast rules. If you're not sure, always have a conversation with someone and find out. How do you prepare for engagement in the IETF? What do you do? So you have to do some work when you come here. So the best way is to write something up in an internet draft. Now, one thing that's changed over the last couple of years is the advent of AI and LLMs, and it's very, very easy to write a draft. And you'll see that some people are writing drafts with LLMs. You need to be really careful with that, in my opinion, because if you produce a document that's 15 or 20 pages long and it has little substance that is different or new, then you'll get sort of backlash from the community. They won't be very happy with that. So you're much better you use an LLM to help you formulate your English and things like that, but keep your idea really short. It's really important to try and get to the nub of what you're trying to do or what the problem you're trying to solve is, and have that very concise and short, rather than saying, I've got this great new protocol and full solution. You'll find that's much harder to get traction in the IETF, because you've got to take people on a journey of what's the problem you're trying to solve, and do you want to solve it here? And if so, can we help you solve it? Rather than being a sort of fake complete. It's important you understand about your intellectual property rights and things like that, because everything that goes into the IETF is in the public domain. You share copyright with anything you produce with the IETF. And if you want to apply a patent to your technology, you want to do that before you bring it to the IETF, effectively. Now, if you do decide to patent it, there's different ways that you can do that, and there's different rules of how you decide to license patents. So that's sort of out of scope mostly for the IETF. We have some guidelines and things, and it's worth reading that if that's something that matters to you. I don't have the RFC there, but it's important that if you have any patents on your technology, that you declare those in the process. That's important for your sake and for the IETF's sake, because when people are evaluating technology, they may want to look at those patents. They may want to look at what the patent licensing terms are, to decide whether they want to adopt that technology or that technology approach. They may go a different route if they decide that actually this is too encumbered if you have to pay license fees. But if you fail, there's nothing that stops you. If you fail to declare your patents, the IETF wouldn't know, but if it came to trying enforcing that patent, you'd find that the courts might take a dim view of that. So be aware. And then finally decide what you're trying to achieve in the IETF. In terms of, some people write an idea up just to say, this is my idea. I just share it with the community, and it's always a great way. Like, you want to write it up as an internet draft rather than some PowerPoint slides. You'll get a lot more traction that way. I've got this idea. I'm not intending to take this any further, but I'm just sharing it with the community to see if other people are interested in something like this. I just sort of sharing ideas. You see quite a lot of that happening. You had to choose your path of how you go through the IETF, and there's lots of different ways of bringing your work to the IETF. One of them was those dispatch mailing lists that I mentioned. If you know the working group that you're targeting, go and talk to that working group, talk to the working group chairs, send your idea to them. They will help you bring the work in, or tell you, actually, this work's out of scope. You can check the charter if it is in scope or not. Maybe the working group needs to be rechartered, that sort of thing. Talk to the working group chairs, they'll help you. Try and find other people who are interested in your idea. And that can be hard, but present it to a working group or a dispatch working group. You'll get people to read it, get people to comment on it, and they'll probably come and find you or email you and say, actually, I want to work on this with you. And having a mixture of authors from different companies or different organizations helps show the broader interest in that work as well. So that helps. If it's a big idea, too big for an existing working group, then you often have this thing called birds of a feather, a BOF. And that's where you have a 2-hour meeting often. And there's a few of those happening this week. They're quite interesting. They're good for new participants because they're very open. So they'll be discussing the different technology at a high level without going into the weeds and details. And then you'll have discussion about, is this something that the IETF wants to work on? Is it solvable? I'm going too slow.
I was just going to say, all those BOFs are listed on the agenda, so you can easily find them.
And a few of those. So, and they're going to find out, is this something the IETF can work on, should work on? Is there enough people who are interested in working on it? Is there a solution? If it's an intractable problem, it might be, actually, you need to scope this down to something that we believe you can do in a reasonable time frame. And then there's also some unusual paths, AD sponsorship, that happens rarely nowadays. And finally, there's also the independent stream. You can publish RFCs, not through the IETF, but they still ends up in RFC through this independent stream. And that's slightly separate. Different set of editors and reviewers from the IETF community will decide whether to take a document that way. So sometimes there's something that's very contentious and the IETF can't get consensus, but there's still a view that publishing is useful, and that's where the independent stream can be particularly helpful. Last slide, I think, other than questions. How to be successful. So I think what I see when people come to the IETF where they fail is trying to bring a complete solution rather than trying to bring your idea. If you can convince the community here that your idea has merit and is interesting and there is a solution, that they don't understand what it is, then you can take people on the journey with you and you'll get a lot more traction. And if you choose to produce slides and present to these sessions, I often see slides where people have, lots of these slides have a lot of content on them. Whereas I would recommend, again, that some of the people might have read your draft, lots of them won't. So the slides, keep them really crisp and to the point. And again, focus on what you're trying to solve and get buy-in on that more so than this is the details of my great solution, how it works. People are less interested in that at the start. Later on, you'll discuss that to death. But initially, that's what's most important. Do write it up as an ID, short presentation, talk to other people. And again, you want to publish your documents early on and get them discussed on the working group mail list if you can. So if you can get them discussed, you're more likely to get agenda time. If your document just goes to the agenda and to the mail list and nobody's interested, it's harder to get agenda time. So having discussion helps. There's hot RFC to present new ideas. And the dispatch groups as well. So it's really about trying to solicit, talk to other people, talk to people in the same working groups and things offline in the hallways around them, and then try and build that sort of consensus there and people are interested in what you're trying to do. And lastly, it's important that people will provide you feedback. It helps to try and be as positive, incorporating that as much as possible. If you're like, oh no, that's just silly, don't do that, you know, we've thought about it already, then you're pushing other people off. You want to try and bring people with you. Maybe they'll author it with you, and sometimes that's good to have different views. You have to do it on your own. And time for questions.
Yep.
Ish, like no.
Yeah. we can have a couple questions. If you have a question, if you could go to the microphone. Just introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Rashid Bouzian from Secrets. I am the author of ODA HTTP. So my question is about the first presentation. Is the first presentation we show the idea or draft? This is the first question. The second question is we show the problem. Is for the first presentation is only we should show the problem and solution without POC, or the POC is required for the first presentation. Then if the POC, which means POC is just running code or source code, which means GitHub. That's my question.
Okay, so you want to try and bring, same sort of thing I say, you want to try and bring the idea of what you're trying to solve is the most important thing. So people, if you bring a long detailed solution and you haven't convinced the community that the problem's worth solving, then you won't get traction. So that's the most important thing. But you want to bring, you have to write it up as a draft. You'll get a lot more people will review it. The whole thing, how IETF works, is all about the drafts. And the draft should have very clearly, this is the problem statement, this is what I'm trying to address, and an outline of the solution, but keep that document short. It's much better to bring a document that's say 10 pages or 15 pages at most for a new idea, and then people will read it. If they see a document that's 100 pages long, they're like, oh, I've got so many other documents to review, that's much harder. So to keep it short, focus on the problem statement and an outline of how you're going to solve it. If that makes sense. And again, with the slides, keep them short, focus on the problem statements, leave time. If you get a 10-minute slot, present for 5 minutes and have 5 minutes for questions.
But in some time, for my case, I have four drafts, for example.
So you have?
I have four drafts.
Okay.
4 drafts, and it is improving by feedback.
Yep.
So we can start by the broad problem, and after that we narrow it for specific problem. So the first presentation is I should present all those drafts or the history of the idea or just the problem and statement. And the constraint that we have only 10 minutes.
Let me chat to you offline afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Tom Sato from Myoverge KK in Japan. I have a question on the implementers who would be using these standards. They would need security reviews. They would need conformance testing and interop in order to make it compatible with other players. And where is that process of first doing the security reviews and doing the conformance testing reviews and interop in IETF process?
So in the IETF process, the security reviews of the document of the protocol happen as the protocol is being developed, and like at the last call stage, the security area will be reviewing the document and commenting on the security, and finally the IESG, the security area directors will review it for security concerns. So throughout that process of the standard, then they're checking that the standard is secure. In terms of like implementation or reference implementations or deployment conformance, that's out of scope for IETF. It's just producing the standard in terms of what falls under the umbrella of this organization. However, you'll find that some people might have GitHub links to reference implementations or implementations that people are working on. And it's very good to be working on implementations at the same time as the standards are progressing, but that's not under the scope of IETF. We're not an organization that does conformance checking or anything like that as part of it.
In the security review, is there a formal process or standard of doing these?
So again, it's outside of my area. So my understanding is for some of the crypto algorithms and things, they might choose to do formal verification of those protocols and things like that. But most of them, no, they're not using formal methods, is my understanding. But it's not, if that's something you're interested in, go along to the meet and greet later on this afternoon, find the security area directors. I'm trying to think who they are now.
I actually don't think they're going to be at Quick Connections today.
Oh, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
They won't be there. But or go along, somebody else in the security area will be there, I'm sure, they'll be able to explain. But I think for the protocols, they do formal verification, but not for other things.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Greg DiBiase. I'm with ICANN. So there's different types of RFCs, experimental, BCP, internet standard. Do you have to have an idea of what it would be in that initial draft? Like, is there a different form that you follow, or at an internet draft stage, it's just the idea and you don't have to put it in a bucket?
That's an excellent question. No, you don't care. So that you can change at any point. There's really no difference on what's in the document for all of these. If it's experimental, you need to describe the experiment you're doing. So that's the one difference. But you'll find that sometimes a draft will start as a standards track, proposed standard, and then actually there's not enough consensus to publish as standards track, and it gets published as informational instead, or it gets published as experimental. So these things can change up or down at different stages through the process. It doesn't make any difference.
And so you don't need to define what you think it is in the internet
draft. If you're doing a protocol, choose proposed standard initially. If you're writing up your own corporate protocol for information, it's informational. If it's just guidance, it's informational, all that sort of thing. If it's a framework, probably I would say don't write frameworks, but that's different.
Thanks.
I'm going to close the queue at this time. We have 2 more people with questions. I did want to follow up and let you know the security area is having office hours tomorrow. So that would be a great opportunity to talk to them about your question. It's on the agenda where those are. Okay. Yeah. Christian?
Yeah, Christian. Yeah. Hi. Christian Dieckhoff, WDZ. I wonder, what would the process look like if the problem I'd like to address already had a draft in the past by someone, but that draft expired? So
that's a good question. So I would, in that first instance, I would try and reach out to the authors of that draft.
Yeah.
So their email address will be listed. Now they might be no longer participating in the IETF. They might not be interested, but reach out to them first and see what you get back, because they might be willing to pick up that idea again and expand on it. If you get nothing back, I would then email the working group and say, actually, I'm interested in this. There's this existing draft. I'm thinking about doing a new draft, and then you can publish, you can reuse that work, because everything that's in the IETF effectively given to the community. The thing to be careful of is that some people are very picky about like who gets listed as an author in a document. So that's the thing to be careful with. That's the bit where asking them helps if they've written something already or you're extending their work. But you don't technically have to do that. You could write an acknowledgement section saying, I'm building on top of this work, and I'm acknowledging this existing draft and the existing people who worked on that. So that's the way you can do it. And again, the way I would decide is if you're taking their protocol and tweaking it slightly, I would give more authorship to them. If you are taking a different stance, but it's sort of close and you're rewriting it a lot, I would just acknowledge them, their work, and just have your own document.
Mm-hmm. And if there's like, to the point, so if it's in that early stage that there was no working group yet, it's just up about finding the probably best matching working group, reaching out to them, or how to tackle something like that. Because
yeah, that's interesting. So if you can't reach the authors,
I tried that.
I got nowhere. Yeah, I don't know that one. I would publish it. In that case, I would just publish a new draft. If you think there's a working group it would go to, and go to the new participants one this afternoon and chat to people. They might be able to help direct you in that. And then, just chat to some other people there. They'll be able to sort of direct you and guide you, having looked at your document and more context about it.
Yeah, we can definitely find people you can talk to. Yeah. Okay, fabulous questions. Thank you to Rob. We appreciate you. We're running over just a little bit of time, so I'm just going to take 1 or 2 minutes just to prepare the slides, and I'm going to bring our next presenter up. The next presentation is actually very short. It's an introduction to the hackathon, which happens at the same time as this program. So Stuart's going to provide a quick introduction to the hackathon, and then we are going to be providing lunch just outside this room. So in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that's getting set up, and then you can have a nice little break until our afternoon sessions. So just give me a minute or two and I'll get the slides up. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to introduce Stuart Cheshire, and he's going to tell you all about the hackathon.
My name's Stuart Cheshire. I'm here to tell you a bit about the hackathon. Sitting here, I was hearing some good questions just now. One bit of advice I have, because I see this happen a lot, when people come to the IETF as newcomers, they often, it feels like they approach it like they're giving a presentation for their middle school science fair, and they're very proud of what they've invented and they want to get a gold star and be told how smart they are. And the reality is that is not making best use of the resources that are available at the IETF. You have a lot of people here who are the world's leading experts in networking, and you can get a lot more out of the IETF if you come with a problem description and you say, I'm working on this, or the company I work for is working on this and we've run into this problem. Here's a description of the problem. Can anybody help us work out how to solve it? Now, you may have an idea how you think you're going to solve it, but I would strongly recommend not leading with that to start with, because the reality is the people here who've been working in networking for 10, 20, 30 years probably have a lot more experience than you do. And the thing you thought of that you think is a really novel idea, it might be something that's been brought up time and time again in the past, and maybe it has some flaws or shortcomings, which is why it hasn't been done. There's quite often good reasons why seemingly obvious things haven't been done, and it's because they have non-obvious problems or security flaws. So that's my advice, is you may think you have the perfect solution, but maybe keep that to yourself to start with, because a request for help gets a lot more positive reaction. Most of the people who come to these IETF meetings are very helpful people, and they love solving problems. And if you describe a problem to them, they'll be really interested in helping you try to solve it. If you come in saying, I don't want your input, I already know how to solve it, I just want you to tell me that I'm great, well, you're in the wrong audience. Ask your mom and dad to tell you you're great if that's what you're looking for. The other question I heard was about conformance testing. Now, the IETF is not like other industry standards bodies that have membership fees and legal agreements. And because of that, the IETF doesn't have conformance testing. And the reason for that is because the IETF has found that conformance testing actually doesn't guarantee quality. It's really, you cannot test quality into a piece of software. You have to write good quality software in the first place. And conformance testing may find certain obvious mistakes, but just because you pass the conformance test doesn't mean that your software is perfect. And that is actually a great introduction to what I'm here to talk about, which is the hackathon. Okay, this is where we are. This is a little bit about me. I've been coming to the IETF for many years. Currently, I work at Apple. You can read that in the PDF if you're interested later. I want to take this opportunity to give sincere shout out, thanks and gratitude to the people who organized the hackathon. Their names are here: Charles, Benno, Barry. They work incredibly hard. I volunteered to give this presentation today because they're all juggling so many other things that they were not able to be here right now. So I'm here representing them for the hackathon, but I want to acknowledge the enormous amount of work they do to make it possible, and it is extremely valuable for the IETF. Now, this is a slide you should have seen before, and you'll see it again at the start of every meeting. And it is really important that you understand the processes that the IETF works on. As a standards body, the IETF has been around for many decades, which is not at all common in this industry. Companies come and go, standards bodies come and go. I remember a few years ago, the big news in networking was the UPnP forum. Everybody's talking about UPnP, and now there isn't even a website for it anymore. It imploded and it's gone, it's defunct. So the IETF survives because it has a really good work culture. Part of that, which is probably the most important thing, is showing respect for all of the participants. In the early days of the IETF, it was not always that good. We had a lot of grumpy old men who didn't like newcomers coming in and made it very clear. Thankfully, the attitudes of the community have evolved, and we make a conscious effort now to welcome all the newcomers like you. Everybody should treat you with respect. If you have questions, I think you'll find lots of people who are very happy to talk to in the corridor. If you have a lot of questions at the microphone, at some point it might be appropriate to say, well, we don't need to take up the whole working group meeting time for this, but there's lots of time over lunch and breaks to talk. And wherever you are in your career, I highly recommend you take advantage of this opportunity to be around some of the smartest networking people in the world. You can learn so much from their experiences and their history. So treating everybody respectfully is really important. If you experience bad behavior or you see anybody else not being treated well, we have a team of IETF ombuds representative. I was going to say ombudsmen, but they're not all men anymore. And that post was created specifically to ensure that we continue to have good, respectful treatment of everybody in the IETF. We talked earlier about patents. If you or your company has a patent on a technology, then you are expected, if you're operating in good faith in the IETF, to be public and disclose that so that everybody making decisions can do that with full information. It is considered extremely poor form to secretly have a patent, suggest something to go into an RFC, and after the standard is published, say, haha, we have a patent, you owe us money now. I highly recommend against doing that for two reasons. One is, when the policy is so clear, you'll have a hard time enforcing a submarine patent in court. And the second thing is, if you hope to have a long, successful career in networking, do not tarnish your reputation like that. There is no quicker way to get yourself ignored than by doing that. Because if people know that you're not trustworthy, you will have no hope of getting any of your other ideas into any other RFC ever in the future. So that is career suicide. Come to the IETF honestly, act in good faith, be open and transparent and honest. That is the best approach. Now, I talked about conformance testing. We do not have a formal conformance testing process, which is if you pass this, then you're allowed to say that you've done the RFC, because we realize that those tests are fairly crude. It is remarkable that the IETF produces amazingly high quality work without conformance testing. We all have devices, whether they're phones or tablets or laptops or a printer or a thermostat or whatever it is, that have, for example, a DHCP client. And when you think about it, DHCP is a phenomenally reliable protocol. Right? When have you ever connected to the Wi-Fi at an airport with your phone and had it not get a DHCP address? It is phenomenally reliable. And that is a result of people working together and testing. And it's not a result of some company saying, well, we passed the conformance test, stop complaining about it. Because we realize that just passing a conformance test is not the same as being totally, completely reliable and dependable. And the hackathon is a valuable part of that whole process, that people working on a particular technology get together in person. When I was young in this career, we were working on DHCP. That is mature and stable at this point, and not much is changing, but there are newer things. I was just in the hackathon this weekend working on L4S, which is a new low loss, low latency architecture for IP packet forwarding. We can do this work over the internet. We can have open source projects. We can have video conferences and work by email, and those are all very effective. But there is no substitute for getting in a room face to face and having the equipment. And I've got my laptop, and Greg has his laptop, and he's got some packet gateway devices, and we're running TCP dump and Wireshark and getting packet traces and experimenting with parameters, and we can get 3 months work done in 1 weekend at the IETF. So the high quality of the internet protocols that we all depend on day to day for so much of what we do comes from that working together, and not aiming for some artificial designation that, oh, you passed conformance test, I'm not looking at anymore. People will find bugs. Even when you thought it was great, somebody will find some case where it doesn't work, and that's when you get together and you look at the packet traces, and you might argue about whose fault it is, and you might disagree with how you interpret the RFC or the draft, but you end up coming to some agreement and you make the changes so that it works. A big part of the IETF, you may have heard this phrase, rough consensus and running code. And that is a very important part of the IETF ethos. Again, this is not universally true of all standards bodies. There are certain organizations that will sit around and have meetings and debate things and make a document, and then kind of throw the document at the engineers and say, implement this. And however smart you are, networking is hard. And I don't believe anybody ever gets it right first time. Even the people here with 20, 30, 40 years experience, you get better with experience, but there are always things that you didn't think of, that you didn't anticipate. So the IETF has got this very strong principle that we write code and develop specifications in parallel, and the information feeds back and forth. So we might start off by writing up a problem statement of what we think the issue is that we have to solve. We may come up with a proposal of what we think we're going to do about it. But before that draft gets an RFC number, people will implement it. And ideally more than one team, because you want to know that different teams can read the draft and actually come to an agreement about what the draft is trying to say. And if they disagree, that's a good sign that the draft needs to be reworded. And in the course of trying things, inevitably you will find things that didn't work the way you thought. There may be timing problems or other issues that you didn't anticipate, but because you tried them out before the spec was finalized, you have a chance to fix that. So there is this back and forth, write the code, find the bugs, update the spec, modify the code, try again, find another bug, and you go back and forth. And when that process slows down and different implementations from different people are all working smoothly together, everybody agrees that what the draft says is clear and not subject to misinterpretation or disagreement, then it's time to go to RFC, because once an RFC number is issued, there are no more corrections. RFCs are permanent. You can work on a successor RFC to update the old one if you find mistakes. There is an RFC errata process where if you find a typo or a mistake, you can submit that, but the RFC will never be revised. So we worked really hard to try to make sure that it is very thoroughly reviewed before we commit to giving it a number. The IETF hackathon takes place Saturday and Sunday. It is free, and they also generally provide free food, which is very nice. So don't abuse that, but that's part of the intention of the hackathon. Is we like to make things fun. Now, writing documents and arguing about them is fun as well, but most of us, I imagine, in this room, if you're like me, we like programming. We got into this because we like computer programming, and the hackathon can be a great fun experience to be in a room full of other people who also like computer programming, and you're not just working on documents, you're actually writing code and running it and seeing it work, and that is really rewarding. It's also a great way for newcomers to get introduced to the IETF process, and there are people in that room who get paid $1,000 an hour for consulting, and if you wanted to get their time to help you with something, you probably couldn't afford it. But at the hackathon, you might just be sitting next to them. I was in there yesterday, and somebody was looking at something on their computer, and there was something that was been puzzling them for a while, and they just asked me because I was sitting next to them, and they said, like, when there's no DHCP server, my computer, I don't know whether it's a laptop or a phone, whatever, but it gets this IP address 169.254 something. What's that all about? And I said, well, that's called the link local address. IPv4 and IPv6 have link local addressing, and it's like a safety net. When the network's broken, when the DHCP server's not working, or you don't have a DHCP server, you might just have a laptop with an Ethernet cable plugged into some other device, and there is no network infrastructure. The link local address is better than nothing. It at least lets you communicate on that cable. You can't connect to the whole internet without gateways and routers and infrastructure, but two devices on the same desk and a cable can communicate, and that's what link local addresses are for. And if you want to read more about how it works, it's RFC 3927. And he said, thank you, and that was great. I didn't say I wrote that RFC. I didn't feel the need to mention that, but it was kind of weird that, like, he was literally sitting next to me and asked this question, and the person who wrote the RFC was there to explain how it works and why it's like that. So it is a great opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the people who've been working at the IETF for decades, and most of them are pretty nice and friendly and willing to share, and you can just ask questions, and rather than asking AI or asking your friend, you can actually ask the person who wrote the RFC and they'll explain it to you. I think I've covered most of this. It's a 2-day event. It's free. Right now, we have about 300 people. There is a wiki. So if you're just interested in doing some fun programming, you can look on the wiki. see the projects that are listed, email the organizers and say, do you need some help working on this? If you just go to the IETF.org website and click through to the meeting information, you'll see the hackathon listed there with the wiki. Normally it's fairly informal. You can see in the picture there's a whiteboard. When the project champions show up, they find an empty table, write their name on the whiteboard. So that's how the various participants can find the team that they're working with.
And I'll just add there on the wiki, if you find an asterisk next to a project, that indicates that it's a good project for new participants to look into, because it's a little more open, maybe not so detailed in a particular protocol, or something that's maybe a little bit more collaborative for new participants. So any questions about the hackathon? I think everybody's hungry. Well, thank you, Stuart. We appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
And to more important things, when you head out this door, my colleague Tess is out there guarding the lunch with her life right now. Because space is a little bit limited out there, feel free to get your lunch and come back in here if you want to eat. You're more than welcome to come in here and just relax. And then after lunch, we'll be back with just a couple more sessions with more information. So we look forward to seeing you then. So have a nice break. Thank you.
Stuart.
I appreciate you coming by.